Let us pray. Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor and blessings as your servants whom you have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberations in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Chairman. Yes, for majority.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, Tuesday, 20th November 2018. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of Kwale for the year ended June 30th, 2017. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of County Executive of Mombasa for the year ended 30th June 2017. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of Lamu for the year ended 2017. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of County Executive of Elgeyo Marakwet for the year ended 30th June 2017. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of County Executive of Wasingishu for the year ended 30th June 2017. The report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the County Executive of West Pokot for the year ended 30th June 2017. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of County Executive of Turkana for the year ended 30th June 2017. Report of Auditor General on the financial statements of County Executive of Nandi for the year ended 30th June 2017. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of County Executive of Trans Nzoia for the year ended 30th June 2017. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of County Executive of Tana River for the year ended 30th June 2017, and the report of Auditor General on financial statements of County Executive of Taita Taveta for the year ended 30th June 2017.
Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to give notice of the following motion. That pursuant to Standing Orders 187 and 189, the House approves the nomination of Senator George Ochilo Ayakombogo, EGH MP, to serve in the following select committees of the Senate. A, Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries, and B, Committee on National Cohesion, Equal Opportunity and Regional Integration. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of order?
I don't know if I heard the leader right. To the best of my knowledge, the Committee on Agriculture is not a select committee. Did she mean select committee or standing committee? The notice has to be amended.
Senator Haneri, all standing committees of the House are select committees. Next order.
Order number 7, statements.
Senator. Honorable Senator's statement from Senator Fatuma Dulo, we did agree that it be raised tomorrow because of the interest it has and the content which it's carrying. So next order.
Order number 8, the Land Value Index Laws Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2018, second reading, division.
Honorable members, for the convenience of the House, we will defer the division order number 8, the order number 9, order number 10. So, okay. Next order.
Order number 10, motion, report of the Sessional Committee on County Public Accounts and Investments on the inquiry into possible loss of funds through the acquisition of land, LR 7879/4, part by the National Land Commission.
Honorable Senators, the SBS, the House Committee did direct that the division for order number 10 be done on Tuesday next week. Next order.
Order number 11, motion, National Assembly amendments to the Urban Areas and Cities Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 4 of 2017.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the motion. To move or give notice? Okay. I beg to move the motion that the amendment by the National Assembly to the Urban Areas and Cities Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 4 of 2017, be now considered. Mr. Speaker, this motion I'm moving is a procedural motion. The substantive discussion of the amendments will occur once, if the Senate adopts, approves this procedural motion. And I'm requesting the senators to vote in affirmative because it will give us an opportunity to now look at the amendments that have come from National Assembly. Failure to support it now, Mr. Speaker, would mean we go to mediation without considering the amendments that have come from National Assembly. And therefore, I want to request members that we vote in affirmative, requesting them to vote in affirmative in support of this very important bill. What I want to thank National Assembly, Mr. Speaker, is that there seems slowly maybe a new spirit for working together. And I want to thank your office and the office of the Speaker in the National Assembly. Maybe you have reached a certain level of working consensus, and that helps in moving bills in this House. I'm happy because I know 2 other bills are now under consideration in National Assembly, and that spirit then will assist in ensuring that the many, many private member bills that have moved from this House, Mr. Speaker, given the due consideration. So when the time comes at the committee stage, when considering these bills, we will then see the viability and the wisdom behind the amendments that they will have brought before us. I'd like to ask Senator Wetangula to second, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, let me just emphasize this, that this is a procedural motion, just to introduce the bill to the House. It is not a vote for 24 or for anything. It's just to make sure that the bill comes to the House. Then when we go to the committee now, we raise the issues around it. And maybe I need the attention of senators to appreciate this what I'm trying to say.
What is your point of order, Senator Wetangula?
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry the majority leader had not consulted with me on this matter, but I'm at a loss as to what he's prosecuting. Mr. Speaker, if this is a bill from the National Assembly, when it is referred to this House via message, it comes and subjected to first reading, then second reading, then we go through all the motions of a bill. But now we're being told this is a procedural motion to introduce an amendment to a bill. I've never heard of this here, Mr. Speaker. What I would, because we can't just acclaim to what looks like very far-reaching introductions into a bill. First of all, we would want even to know what is being defined as a city. Because if we are going to add to cities the responsibility for managing information, communication, and technology services, telecommunication services, and so on, I know we are not there yet, but I'm saying, let me prosecute my argument. If we are going to do this, Mr. Speaker, then the ordinary course of procedure is for the message from the lower house to go through those motions, the bill itself to be given to members to look at and understand. We still have issues, Mr. Speaker, about what is a city. I would want Eldoret to be a city, given its expansive nature. I would want Nakuru to be a city. I understand that the city is limited to Mombasa, Kisumu, and Nairobi. If you go to UK, you find small towns like Oxford are called cities, small towns like Cambridge are called cities. And if the description of a city is going to confer additional responsibilities and advantages to a city, then this House, as a representative of counties, must look at this and define it more broadly than it's being defined. So let's understand what procedure we are following before I agree to second the procedural motion that I don't understand.
Leader of majority.
That is precisely what I was trying to explain here, Mr. Speaker. Standing Order number 159 provides for the procedure for receiving a bill. Remember, first of all, this is our bill, which went to the National Assembly. They have considered, they have made amendments. The bill is coming back to us, Mr. Speaker. And then upon receipt of that bill, there's a procedure of introducing it to the House. And that procedure is provided for in Standing Order 159. So in that 159, it says that an amendment by National Assembly to a bill originating in the Senate shall be circulated to senators within 7 days of receipt of the amendment from the National Assembly and shall be put down for consideration in a committee of the whole on such a day as the Senate Business Committee shall appoint. So it just comes to the House and it goes to committee of the whole, then we will consider. And if you read 3, it says, where the Senate has resolved that the amendment by the National Assembly to a bill be considered and on the appointed date, the Senate shall dissolve into the committee of the whole, where each amendment shall be called out by the clerk and may be agreed or rejected in accordance to 112. And of course, if it's rejected at that stage, it goes to mediation. Now, how do you introduce it to this House for purpose of taking it to the committee of the whole? You bring a procedural motion. Which motion is the one I'm moving it now, Mr. Speaker, which is just to introduce to the House. And that's why this procedural motion does not require the debate on the substance, because we don't have a motion in the House yet. We don't have the motion properly in the House. It's just being introduced. Once it's introduced, we'll move now to the committee where we'll debate and need 24 votes. At this stage, we just need a vote by acclamation of aye, nay, and then introduce it. Now, the consequence of, for example, after what I am doing, the consequence of voting no will mean that the bill will go to mediation, Mr. Speaker, without our contributions and consideration of the committee of the whole, whether we agree with National Assembly or not. So that then this is just an introduction phase. With that explanation, does that suffice now for me to ask Senator Fatuma Dulo to second, Mr. Speaker? Senator Wetangula agrees with me.
Okay. Senator Dulo.
Mr. Speaker, I second. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question, which is that the amendment by the National Assembly to Urban Areas and Cities Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 4 of 2017, be now considered.
Put the question.
Put the question. Yeah, I thought. Yeah. Senator Moses Wetangula.
Mr. Speaker, I'll be very brief. Now that the majority leader has explained this process, it is a little clear. Mr. Speaker, I want to caution the House that when we go to the committee of the whole, we must very carefully look at what we are defining as a city, so that we do not lock out areas and growing urban centers that require elevation, so that they can be conferred with responsibilities and opportunities that can help the growth of urban areas. Mr. Speaker, I say this because there are programs coming from the World Bank, from other donors, that are clearly defined to benefit cities. And it means, Mr. Speaker, that we will end up with such huge doses of donor support ending up in only 3 counties out of 47 counties. We would want to enlarge. In fact, Mr. Speaker, in the future, we should, as a House, legislate that every county headquarters qualifies, subject to certain qualifications, to be called a city, so that benefits can be conferred upon these areas. Look forward to seeing the real amendments in the committee of the whole so that we can be able to deal with them appropriately.
So honorable senators, order members, pursuant to Article 123 of the Constitution and Standing Order number 80, I have determined that this matter does not affect counties. I therefore put the question, which is that the amendment by the National Assembly to Urban Areas and Cities Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 4 of 2017, be now considered. As manner of that opinion say aye. As manner of a contrary view say nay. The ayes have it. So tomorrow the matter will come in the committee of the whole, and that's where the amendments will now be discussed. They will be circulated. They are actually attached. Today's order paper, if you check. The Secretariat will do the needful. Next order.
Order number 12, the Public-Private Partnerships Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 52 of 2017, second reading.
Leader of majority.
The Speaker, I don't see both whips and their deputies on both sides. Mr. Speaker, I was going to request you, before I move this bill, just for them to be alert so that we can dispose the business in, for the division when they can stop me at any point for purpose of that division, Mr. Speaker, for the two motions, three motions that we are supposed to do division. I beg to move the motion that the Public-Private Partnership Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 52 of 2017, be now read a second time. The Speaker, this is a very straightforward amendment. I do not wish to say much. First of all, Mr. Speaker, there has been a lot of concern across the country insofar as issues related to public-private partnership. The Speaker, the Public-Private Partnership Amendment seeks to provide ways, Mr. Speaker, of accommodating various interests from various, Mr. Speaker, where is that? Mr. Speaker, from various stakeholders, particularly at the county level. Mr. Speaker, we were here last term when, Mr. Speaker, Governor of Kericho was brought to this House, Mr. Speaker, pursuant to a public-private partnership memorandum they signed at the county level. And Mr. Speaker, part of the reasons why the governor was brought here is because there was no legal framework of engaging with private entities for purpose of partnership and partnering and delivery of services at the county level. And so this bill is seeking to deal with that anomaly. If I may say, Mr. Speaker, there are many concerns across the country now about the amount of debt that we are accumulating as a country. And the concerns are informed by the model we have adopted to achieve, Mr. Speaker, the development agenda for this nation, particularly infrastructure, say roads, ports, Mr. Speaker, railway. And there is an argument that public and private sector can work together to achieve public good and to achieve development of a nation without resorting to debt. And Mr. Speaker, this happens in forms of concession that, Mr. Speaker, sometimes you can agree that a road, for example, there is a discussion now on how to develop the road between Mombasa to Malaba. Mr. Speaker, there are many entities that are pushing for national government to take a loan from United States, Mr. Speaker, Exim Bank, whereby we will borrow the loan and repay within a certain period of time and be constructed by an American company, because you know the concept of how export-import banks work, Mr. Speaker, otherwise known as Exim banks, work across this country. And so, Mr. Speaker, that kind of model would overburden the citizens of this country who are already reeling from the effects of Mr. Speaker, loans that people have borrowed. And so, Mr. Speaker, this law introduces not only national government, or provides that it's not just national government that will deal with matters of public-private partnership. In Section 2, it's proposed, Mr. Speaker, that an amendment is brought in to substitute the definition of a contracting authority from just being national government, a state department, agency, or state corporation, but also includes the county government's level, the county government or county corporation which intends to have its functions undertaken by private entity. And we hope, Mr. Speaker, with this introduction, the counties now can have an opportunity to engage with private sector for purpose of partnership for service delivery. And this can easily be done. This Nairobi needs this law. The Senator of Nairobi is here, Mr. Speaker. One of the biggest problems Nairobi is dealing with is collection of waste, Mr. Speaker. And with a public-private partnership arrangement, it is possible for a private investor to provide a model to the county that they can collect all the dirt in this city, the waste in this city. Some would propose that, Mr. Speaker, we can recycle them, generate energy from it, and I know that proposal is already on the table. Number two, Mr. Speaker, this Nairobi has become impossible to operate in when it comes to transport. Mr. Speaker, the roads, particularly when the Matatu sector was under challenge in terms of complying with, Mr. Speaker, the traffic laws, it became apparently clear that the number of vehicles people have in this city are so many, and that if you allow everybody to bring their car to the roads, Mr. Speaker, we may never move in this town from morning to evening. The best way to sort the transport problem in this country is to have light railway, Mr. Speaker, what they call in other cities tram. Mr. Speaker, if you go to many cities in the world, go to Washington, D.C., Mr. Speaker, you will have the metro system. Mr. Speaker, operating in actually, I should not have said tram, it is the metro system. You have the metro system operating in Washington, D.C., and that you don't need. One day, while using the metro in D.C., Mr. Speaker, I saw a senior officers from the World Bank. Mr. Speaker, all the staff that work in the Washington, D.C., World Bank, IMF, all those institutions, people who work in the Capitol Hill, Mr. Speaker, people who work in the White House, you don't need to drive. You don't need to drive. You just jump into a metro and you move. It is clean, it's new. In fact, when I visited there this year, I realized they bought even new, Mr. Speaker, trains. And it's beautiful. In fact, it becomes a burden to drive. And Mr. Speaker, for Nairobi to achieve a Nairobi metro system, I think the best thing would be to utilize these amendments that are provided for in this law that opens doors for counties to now engage with the private sector. It doesn't have to be that national government have to borrow, or, Mr. Speaker, that they have to be involved in the public-private partnership. The county government now can directly source private investors who can run a metro system 50 years, 40, 50 years. The value that it will bring in terms of opening up the city and marketing this city and increasing, Mr. Speaker, those who want to operate and work in this city will go up. Nairobi has no other way than to have a metro system. And the only way to do so in the current financial environment is to have a public-private partnership. And it's not just going to benefit Nairobi, it will benefit Machakos County, Kajiado County, and Kiambu County, Mr. Speaker, where movement of persons from Thika to Rongai, Mr. Speaker, to Mavoko, and to these other parts of the country is going to become extremely easy. And so counties are now being included, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is also a definition of who can be a transaction advisor, which means a person who has appropriate skills and experience to assist and advise the contracting authority or the unit on matters relating to public-private partnerships, Mr. Speaker, so that then you don't just go and get a quack who becomes, in quotes, a transaction advisor, but in reality, they cannot provide the expertise, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Act also is amended, Mr. Speaker, to provide a new Section 3A, which provides that the provisions of Public Procurement and Assets Disposal Act 2015 shall be exercised subject to relevant provision of this Act and apply to contracts under this Act only if in the event where there is no express provision setting out the applicable procurement procedures under this Act. So, Mr. Speaker, it is also being qualified under this Act as to extent to which you can apply the procedures of public-private partnership, the procedures of the Public Procurement Asset Disposal Act, which can also lead to inordinate delays if they are not applied properly for purpose of producing results. So those exemptions is to adopt or capture the uniqueness of public-private partnership as a way, Mr. Speaker, of dealing with matters, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, also, there is, this law is being amended to empower the contracting authority, Mr. Speaker. First of all, Mr. Speaker, what is defined as a priority, before I do that, this law is also providing for giving power to the contracting authority to reserve certain projects for disadvantaged groups. It's important for citizens to understand that, Mr. Speaker, public-private partnership does not mean, it doesn't mean a foreigner coming to invest in the country. It also means private citizens locally, because the understanding of what is a PPP to many people is about foreigners, about foreign entities, about governments, and so forth. In this regard, there is room for reserving certain PPP projects in the counties or national level for disadvantaged groups such as women, persons with disabilities, Mr. Speaker, youth, as provided for and defined in other parts of the law, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's important for us to appreciate that the Constitution defines women generally as marginalized groups. And one of the sections that will be amended in future, if women will not be part of the marginalized and it's men, is that section of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, this law also gives the county government the mandate to approve the county priority list before they can submit it to the public-private partnership unit for publication along other national government priority projects. And so the counties have the mandate to ensure that they provide that list. Remember that the public-private partnership unit is managed in a centralized manner or a national entity that requires the, Mr. Speaker, to consider both county and national projects, not just considering only for one sector. And therefore, priority lists are provided by national government and county government to the unit to ensure that the list is, and upon receipt of the list from the national government contracting authorities, the unit shall consider and prepare that report to the cabinet for approval, because then they become national priority list, which captures both county and national government concerns. In fact, part of the reasons why Governor Chepkony had immense struggle in this House, convincing this House why he should not be impeached on the solar project that he wanted to do in Kericho County, is because there was no approval procedures in the counties, and there was no, it was undertaking a process that had not been approved anywhere, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, maybe at that instance, as to say that, and I have insisted that counties should not really fight, Mr. Speaker, to become agents of doing big white elephant projects just because they want to be part and parcel of procurement processes that involve major projects. Mr. Speaker, you know that counties have no business building universities. But you know there are some counties who are busy wanting to build universities. Mr. Speaker, and if you go to the same county, agriculture is struggling. Prices of products and goods in the county, irrigation in the county is struggling, health sector is struggling. The Speaker, ECDs have not been completed. We want to see as a Senate that our counties focus on prioritizing the areas that, Mr. Speaker, have been provided for in Schedule 4, Part 2 of the Constitution before they can reserve any resources for supporting projects that can otherwise be undertaken from the national level. Number two, Mr. Speaker, in continuation of the same, the bill provides that when the committee receives those projects, it goes to the cabinet. And Mr. Speaker, the bill also sets expressly the technical expertise that our contracting authority shall have to procure development, preparation, procurement, contract, negotiation, management of a project under this Act. And Mr. Speaker, that there must be an assessment of the technical expertise of the contracting authority. And Mr. Speaker, where the contracting authority does not have that technical expertise, the public procurement, the public-private partnership unit, Mr. Speaker, shall, in consultation with the contracting authority, appoint a transaction advisor to assist the authority in the preparation, procurement, contracting, negotiation, and financial close phase of a project. There is a recognition under the bill that the counties, for example, or an entity, a parastatal or any other entity, Mr. Speaker, may not have.
Let's consult in low tones, honorable members.
Mr. Speaker.
Order, members. Let's consult in low tones.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for your protection, protecting me from Senator Orengo and Senator Cherargei, Mr. Speaker, who have arrived at the House in an excited manner, Mr. Speaker, for reasons that I may not know, except to say that they are absent when we wanted to vote. And so, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that in this, Mr. Speaker, this bill, there is a recognition that a procurement entity or a contracting entity may not have the capacity, Mr. Speaker, to undertake the PPP consultation processes. And so to avoid, Mr. Speaker, a situation where the public or a private entity is going to take advantage of the public sector or the lack of capacity in the public sector, Mr. Speaker, this law says the unit must provide that capacity to be used, Mr. Speaker, to assist whether it's county or national government entity in pursuance of that very important process. Mr. Speaker, the law also provides the procedure, Mr. Speaker, of dealing. If you see Section 12, Mr. Speaker, it provides for the procedure of preparing and evaluating the report. And it provides that the proposal evaluation team may reject all submissions by bidders, prepare a report, state reasons for rejecting, Mr. Speaker, and if they have accepted, Mr. Speaker, the contract must provide the reasons for accepting to pursue a particular direction. Mr. Speaker, it also provides for, the law provides also for the procedure for county government public-private partnership projects, and it gives the counties a right to enter into the PPP and be responsible for the administration of the overall project cycle. So that, Mr. Speaker, the counties have control also in the delivery. And if you see, that is the new section 54A. Mr. Speaker, gives a detailed procedure of how the county is going to be involved and how they are going to control up to 54B. So, Mr. Speaker, this law is basically amending Public-Private Partnership Act 2013 to provide framework that will regulate the entry of county government into an implementation of public-private partnership and regulates the manner in which county governments can carry out the PPP. And so, Mr. Speaker, this bill is useful. I want to basically convince my colleagues here, Mr. Speaker, that we pass it. Let's give our counties now no excuse why they cannot engage, Mr. Speaker, the private sector insofar as this process is concerned. Mr. Speaker, I'm looking for Senator Mutula Kilonzo. Who was, Mr. Speaker? Oh, yeah, who was, Mr. Speaker, in this House? No, I'm not looking for him to second. I'm looking for him. I'm looking for him not to second, but because he was around. And Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., we have had discussion with him, knows what happened to Governor Chepkwony, even Senator Wetangula, yes. And Senator Wetangula was here. We let him off only because the threshold was not as high as required. Because otherwise, Mr. Speaker, he would have been impeached and removed from his seat on an account of failure of procedure and legal framework to deal with PPPs. Now, what is the way forward? Mr. Speaker, as a move of this amendment, I suggest that the committee, where it is chaired by Engineer Mahmood, Mr. Speaker, should look into the procurement public-private partnership unit, Mr. Speaker, the delivery unit itself, to ensure that, Mr. Speaker, because they are going to participate in the approvals that are required from the counties, Mr. Speaker, the composition of that unit should now be expanded to include representation of counties. The reason for that, Mr. Speaker, is because all the entities of government that are performing functions that relate to national and county level, we have in this House ensured that we amend the law to accommodate the county governments, because if that is not going to be the case, then there is nothing will stop national government to use the institutional structure for the establishment of that unit to deny certain counties certain projects, because, Mr. Speaker, there is no one doing the bidding on behalf of the counties. And for that reason, therefore, I am suggesting that, although I am moving the amendment as they are, Senator Mahmood, who is the chair of the committee that is looking at this issue, must come with the amendments to accommodate the representation of county governments in the public-private partnership procurement unit, Mr. Speaker, under the Public-Private Partnership Act 2013. With also many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I move this motion and request the chair of the committee, Senator Mahmood, the chair of the Finance Committee, who is looking at this law, to second.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I beg to second this bill, the Public-Private Partnership Amendment Bill 2017. Mr. Speaker, sir, the PPP Bill, National Assembly Bill 52 of 2017, is being amended to recognize county government as contracting agencies, because by the time when the initial act was enacted in 2013, There were no counties there, so the idea is to provide for the county
Order members,
as contracting agencies so that they can be able to take part in the public-private partnership. So Speaker, sir, why PPP? I think that's the question we need to ask. So Speaker, sir, increased demand for infrastructure like roads, water, telecommunication, and power on government actually requires that we look for other source of funding. In fact, private PPP is meant to provide the funding gap for infrastructure. In the arrangement of PPP, contracting entities like the national government and the counties will engage private sector to provide the needed infrastructure, but this will be preceded by a lot of preparation in terms of design, in terms of feasibility study, which of course also the private sector also must take part in terms of that preparation, but the government entity itself must have actually its own model so that when the private sector proposes to fund a project and says it's going to generate revenue through tolls and the rest, then the fees charged are actually reasonable, and the contracting agency must have its own financial model to be able to have that, to agree to that. So Speaker, sir, I think well over, PPP has been accepted, and in fact, if you see many parts of the world, infrastructure projects like big roads are actually, all toll roads actually are funded through private sector, so that we can be able to get the funding back. So Speaker, sir, the procurement is a bit different from the normal procurement we know, traditional procurement, where you just tender and you get the responsive offer to do the job. Is a bit different. Here, they must be interested parties in terms of private sector, and they must have the capacity to be able to undertake that work. In most cases, the project itself will be the collateral. I think the private sector doesn't need to provide any other collateral. And in fact, the government will take the part. I mean, there are risks that are apportioned to parties. The risks are apportioned to the party that best can take it. Government can take the risks that are actually like political risk, but I think in terms of project, the financing and the rest of those people will take. Just because as a committee, we have looked at this bill. We did carry out public participation. We had a lot of submissions from various entities, including private sector. We had private citizens. We had Council of Governors presenting the memorandum to us. In fact, they had issues with a few clauses in the bill. When we were in Eldoret last time, when the Senate was sitting in Eldoret, we did public participation, and whatever we got from the public was very encouraging. In fact, we were able to incorporate in our amendments which were proposed. We have proposed a lot of amendments. So, Speaker, sir, the fundamental of PPP, if you look at PPP, the fundamentals that there are, first of all, you must have, you must look at the project and say that I need this project. Then there must be a feasibility done, and that feasibility must show that this project can actually be undertaken, initially for large projects, not small projects. It must be undertaken so that, a study be done, both the client and the client be able, this can be done, and we now invite interested parties or private sector to look at it. Then, of course, the project committee, there is a committee which is stationed nationally here, composed from national government and also the Council of Governors about representation there, and also private sector, people who are not in government but who are nominated by the cabinet secretary are also in that committee. We have also a specialized unit in the Treasury, which is the PPP unit, and in fact, all this process down from the county level to the national government, and of course, approvals will be done at the cabinet level and also at Parliament, and also for the county assemblies must have a say in what is being done by the counties. And once the project is approved, of course, then that approval, it's subjected to some competitive, dialogue, bidding. You can have dialogue with the private sector, or you can actually bid, have the people who are interested to commit, and at the back of your mind, you at least know what the cost will be like, and what are the revenues that are actually accruing from that. Because finally, on a concession period of about 30 years, the project will be handed over to the government. Then, of course, you have approval by the PPP committees, both at the national level and county, and approval by the parliament or assembly as was required. Then, of course, from there on, private sector and the government will discuss and see when we are going to have the financial closure, and the project is on. So, Speaker, this is a very important model. I think, this country, this thing one time was tried on the road, Uhuru Highway, between Nyayo Stadium to Rironi. In fact, I remember when I was in the Ministry of Roads then, we did tender for an overfly road between Nyayo Stadium to Rironi. Strabag was actually rated the best, but I think later on, it discovered that they had one person in their partnership who was supposed to have been, a bit corrupt, some Russian guy. And the project never took place. In fact, that project up to now is still not being implemented. And the road mentioned by Majority Leader between Mombasa and Nairobi, private sector. But I think the discussion we're hearing now is that government will borrow. Government should not borrow when it comes to BPP. BPP means private sector will bring the finances. Government will be able to partner with them. So I think the understanding we should get is that we saw the bill that came from the assembly that we should give the disadvantaged people. I think this model won't allow that, because these projects are actually by people who are able to source for the fund and do it. Whether you are disabled, whether you are or somebody who is fully able, you must have the finances to do the project. So, Speaker, sir, we have looked at the bill. We have proposed a lot of amendments. Our report was tabled. In some areas, I think our colleague in the other house rushed over it, but I think it's a very important bill, Mr. Speaker, sir. But one thing which must be clear is that, this is not PPP is not privatization. PPP is not also, is important for Kenya because it's
very, very important to be followed. Mr. Speaker, clause 12(1) is equally important because it provides for, Mr. Speaker, the contracting entity, especially I'm focusing on counties because they are the ones that don't have a lot of capacity, will be able to be allowed to talk to 3, 4, 5 competing parties, talk to party A, party B, party 3, and see which one is giving them the best deal. And this, Mr. Speaker, is how the counties can have value for money. Mr. Speaker, in general terms, public-private partnerships can be very good, but they can also be very dangerous, Mr. Speaker, if the country institutions of governance do not do their work. Because, Mr. Speaker, what may happen in some situations is that you will find a situation where in a county, when you are talking of a public-private partnership, you'll end up finding those in the executive are the ones who are benefiting from these private partnerships through phony companies, offshore companies, and so on, Mr. Speaker. So I would want to urge, Mr. Speaker, that we tighten the law so that when the assemblies look at the process, when this Senate looks at the process, and when the unit looks at the process, they make sure that provisions of probity, fair play, honesty, and lack of corruption in the transactions are adhered to. So that if it's a transaction in Isiolo County, it should never be a transaction to benefit the governor of Isiolo or anybody else in Isiolo but the people of Isiolo. Mr. Speaker, this is what...
Order, members, order. Orders, members.
Mr. Speaker, those disruptions in such an important bill are not helpful. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the history of our country, almost all filth-rich people in this country, Mr. Speaker, have been public servants, sitting in public offices, doing personal work. Every time there's an agreement between government and a foreign entity, the benefits flow to individuals. We must seal these loopholes, Mr. Speaker, so that counties can become focal points of growth. I am so happy about this bill, Mr. Speaker, because we want to allow, and the law now allows, that if Bungoma County wants to engage a German entity to tarmac their roads and commit payments for the next 5 years, they can do so provided there's concurrence from the public-private partnership unit that must have representation from the counties. In fact, Mr. Speaker, our committee has recommended that we reduce the representation by the national government to a level where it's almost at parity with the representation from the Council of Governors. There is also a provision, Mr. Speaker, that the Council of Governors, where they lack expertise, can hire a qualified professional to represent them in these transactions. Meaning, Mr. Speaker, that where you need a qualified financial analyst, you need qualified engineers, you need qualified architects, you need qualified assessors, you need qualified actuaries, you can, Mr. Speaker, hire them and have them as transaction advisors. So that at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, the bottom line is value for money and benefits to the people of this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I urge honorable members that this bill, apart from allocation of resources that we pass year in, year out, opens an enormous potential, Mr. Speaker, a huge potential. I can now see, Mr. Speaker, the County of Nairobi can now enter a public-private partnership to clean up our city, to maintain cleanliness, to get the ice of Dandora dam site out of our way, to clean Nairobi River and make Nairobi River be clean to the extent of even being navigable by recreational groupings and so on, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill portends very, very good tidings for the growth and expansion and the benefits of devolution that we so much defend and represent in this House. I beg to support, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Adan Dulo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to support this bill. And I think, Mr. Speaker, this bill will solve partly the problem I have with the Isiolo County government. And I'm hoping and praying that it will be assented to before the current project that the county government Isiolo has started being implemented. Mr. Speaker, I have had issues with Isiolo County because they have introduced a public-private partnership program for healthcare services without following the due process of the law. Mr. Speaker, public-private partnership is really very important, and we do support as leaders in this House. But unfortunately, the challenge we have in the counties, and I'm sure it's not only Isiolo County, I have a discussion with several senators where county governments enter into a partnership with individuals or with private companies. If I may give an example for Isiolo County, they are entering into a partnership with a particular company that is a limited company by guarantee, where they are not subjected to provisions of this particular bill that is being proposed. Mr. Speaker, when this project came up, I really objected and protested because the law was not followed. Mr. Speaker, I think, according to me, this bill will solve much of our problem, and I think the provision is clearly pointing out the areas of concern. First, the surveys are done. Before the survey, Mr. Speaker, the governors pick partnership single-handedly without subjecting them to a competitive process. And Isiolo is a very good example, Mr. Speaker, sir. Secondly, they have to do evaluation. And I think this is really very important, where the bill proposes evaluation report must be done and must be subjected to PPP units for the purpose of ensuring credibility of the company, financial ability of the company. This is really very important. Today we have a scenario, and I know there is a petition before the Senate Committee of Health, where the governor has entered into a partnership. The survey was done secretly, without public participation. They have prepared an agreement that was tabled before the assembly. Mr. Speaker, when I queried and I told the county government that the agreement cannot give him budgetary allocation, the county assembly has gone ahead. And the executive have tabled a regulation to allow them establish a fund without, Mr. Speaker, without consulting National Treasury. And this is taxpayers' money. And this is a company that is not known to anybody. This is a company that Isiolo County, they don't know about it, Mr. Speaker. And I think this bill, once it goes through, it will be able to help us. And one of the provisions of the agreement, and also the bill I'm having a challenge with, is where the governor is establishing a special purpose joint account against PFM Act with a private entity. And Mr. Speaker, out of that, the money is pushed to the company's account. Mr. Speaker, this is an open theft, which I believe the Health Committee will be able to expose, because it's unacceptable and this is taxpayers' money. Mr. Speaker, public participation is one of the things that I really feel should be amended or brought into this provision, because members of public must know where their money is being taken, Mr. Speaker. Members of public should not be taken for a ride, Mr. Speaker. The constitutional provision is very clear in terms of public participation. Today, the agreement and regulation that the Assembly of Isiolo has passed, one, the regulation was not published, the regulation was not gazetted, the regulation was not subjected to public participation, Mr. Speaker, and this is happening in Kenya today when we have legislation, Mr. Speaker. And I think as a Senate, we must come out and condemn this position. Mr. Speaker, in one of the clauses of that particular regulation, it is proposed that the Chief Officer of Finance can appoint any person, any institution to operationalize the account, Mr. Speaker. This can be anybody. It can be even members of public can be appointed by the chief officer to manage the fund for that particular purpose. And I think this is really very serious, Mr. Speaker, and we need to deal with it. Now, the other aspect is submitting the list of the PPP contractors. Mr. Speaker, this is very important. It will avoid where the contractors are single-handedly picked by the county government. And I think this will be able to deal with the current issues we have. Mr. Speaker, again, the bill proposes that the evaluation report, once it is submitted to PPP, the PPP unit should be able to advise and tell them this contractor is valid and this contractor is not. And in the event that the contractor does not meet the threshold, the county government will be told, go back and re-advertise the position. And that is really very critical, Mr. Speaker. And I think that is why I am really supporting this particular bill, and it is very important. Mr. Speaker, the aspect of benefit. When the agreement that was presented before the County Assembly of Isiolo, the only thing that members of public were told, this company is going to deal with community health workers. But when you clearly look into that agreement, you will see that they are going to provide everything that deals with healthcare services in a hospital. And this company has not been subjected whether they are able to carry out those services or not. Mr. Speaker, we're having a big problem in this country. And I think this bill addresses that aspect because the public need to know what their benefits are, what are the proposals are, what are the strategies that are in place to make sure that they have benefited from this particular project. Mr. Speaker, I clearly support this particular bill, and I think, Mr. Speaker, if we don't deal with the issues of PPP in our country, most of the counties are going to lose huge sums of money. I had been in discussion with PPP unit here in Nairobi because of Isiolo issues. Mr. Speaker, you can imagine the PPP unit advised the county government not to enter in this particular agreement. And they go ahead and actually implement it. Mr. Speaker, they requested the service of PPP, and the PPP unit went all the way to Isiolo to train them how they should enter into PPP agreement. But unfortunately, they avoid that route because it is lengthy. It's actually a route that can be able to make sure that taxpayers' money is protected. But unfortunately, county governments are avoiding those routes and the legal procedures that are required. And I think we should tell them off when these issues are brought to this particular Senate. Mr. Speaker, another point I wanted to raise is whether the PPP projects are within CIDP or ADP. A very good example is the project that is before the Senate in terms of petition is not in CIDP, it is not in ADP, and the county government went ahead with the assembly to actually pass that particular project. Mr. Speaker, this is really wrong, and I think we need to deal with these matters, and I hope we will be able to subject this particular bill to the public participation, especially in the rural areas where these issues are happening, so that we can be able to close or seal those loopholes in our counties. I thank you and I support.
Senator Orengo James, Leader of Minority.
Mr. Speaker, I'll speak briefly on this bill. I want to say from the outset that I support the bill, and anything that enables counties to be more involved in development projects, whether they are directly undertaken by the counties or they are even private development plans or projects or plans which are national, they must also be an entry point for county governments. To the extent that this bill is sealing the gap in respect of public-private partnerships, this bill should find support from this House without any doubt. The only reason that I'm standing up to speak to this bill is that there is now a cocktail of legislation which I think needs to be synchronized. And those that are undertaking this work, particularly the counties and the county governments, they are confronted with several legislation which include the Public Finance Management Act, the County Government Act, the Public Procurement and Disposal Act, and as you can see, some of those acts or statutes that I've mentioned are subject to consideration or amendment, and so it is not just a straightforward amendment of the Public-Private Partnership Act. And of course, there's also the question of generally the government financial regulations, which will come to play. Having listened to what the Deputy Majority Leader has just said, it is without doubt that all these statutes, including regulations that relate to government expenditure or management of public funds, will come into play. Now, Mr. Speaker, I think the committee, we are going to benefit from the committee. I have not seen the report, but I think eventually we may need to go through these amendments with a tooth comb. A speaker before me talked about memorandums of understanding. There are a lot of governors who are getting into a lot of trouble through signing of memoranda of understanding. And what is the legal status of a memorandum of understanding? And in my view, memorandum of understanding don't go beyond implementation. There are requirements that must be undertaken under the law in respect of projects that are undertaken by public bodies, including the national government and the county government. There are instruments like feasibility studies which find place in this act. But Mr. Speaker, probably from where you sat before, even what constitutes a feasibility study is a matter of legal interpretation, or eventually one would want to determine what is really a feasibility study, and if a county or a government entity undertakes a feasibility study, we need to understand what is really is a feasibility study. But having said all that, Mr. Speaker, we have to have an environment where it is easier to do business and to undertake business or undertake enterprises with the government with the least red tape and bureaucracy. Now we are adding several sets of regulations as if the ones which are in place are not enough. You know, under the County Government Act and the Public Finance Management Act, before resources can be allocated to any projects, there will be a requirement that it is a project which is envisaged by the strategic integrated development plan of every county. So that in a period of 5 years, if in the middle of it you run into an investor who is interested in going into a PP under the Act and in accordance with these regulations, the mere fact that that particular project was not planned for in the 5-year plan would render it null and void, and some counties have found themselves even in criminal courts for undertaking projects that were not planned for in terms of the 5-year plan. So there is need as urgently as possible that particularly the committee, if they didn't do so, and I'm calling upon the House that we interrogate these sets of statutes, the Public Finance Management Act, the County Government Act, the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, and the various financial regulations. As you can see in Clause 4, there's a provision there which inserts a new amendment to the effect that the provisions of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act shall be relevant, but only to the extent that there is no conflict with that act with this amendment, this set of amendments. Now, you'd find that between the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act and the Public Finance Management Act, there are conflict in those two sets of legislation. And now we have another third legislation that has an impact on public procurement and asset disposal. This, in order to make the work of the counties easier, not less accountable, but user-friendly, we need to have a thorough examination and bring cohesion between all these sets of legislation so that there's no confusion in the sector, especially in matters development. I hope that these amendments, particularly as they relate to counties, will make it now possible for counties to undertake projects in which they can secure private investment, but with the participation of the counties, and undertake those projects in an accountable, transparent, and a manner in which the public can get satisfaction in terms of their need and their stresses. But it cannot be left unsaid that the experience of the past, where the projects are undertaken under public-private partnerships, that the private investor willy-nilly in the end makes money, but you find the public entity and the public at large never gets out of these projects having fulfilled its mission or having had services effectively rendered to the public. And I'm hoping that we are not giving an opportunity to counties particularly to be in a position to undertake projects of this nature, but use them as rent-seeking instruments or devices to fill the pockets of those who undertake these projects on behalf of the people of the counties, and even in the national government for that matter. And one would see that in the face, or rather in the period where public partnerships, public-private partnerships became popular in this country, that at the end of the day, in many of those kind of partnerships, our people lost money, and some of the projects floundered, even at the time of inception. And therefore, I hope that the mechanism that has been set, particularly on undertaking feasibility studies, that these feasibility studies would be proper feasibility studies carried out. If the designs that are required before project implementations, then those would be done properly and in interest of the public. And risks assessment are also undertaken to ensure that we do not engage in enterprises that at the end of the day will not make us move forward in terms of national needs and county needs. Mr. Speaker, this this bill has provisions from Clause 9, which I think are useful in terms of assessment of technical, as making technical assessments. The people would be able to prepare these technical assessments, all geared towards procurement, preparation, and contract negotiations. And these are very important tools to use to ensure that any enterprise undertaken under this Act and the amendments that are proposed fulfill their ultimate objectives. Mr. Speaker, having said that much, I support this bill fully. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sakaja Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a good bill. This is an amendment to, I think, a 2013 Act of Parliament that sought to provide a legal framework through which public-private partnerships can be done. And just as Senator Wetangula said, it prevents a lot of opportunity, the scope of what then can be done by the national government, the county governments, indeed increases exponentially once we've been able to diversify the sources of funding and financing of such projects. Mr. Speaker, the national government keeps saying and provides for, even within the PPP unit, that its intention for having such a legislative framework and for dealing with provision of services in such a matter is to improve the quality, the quantity, the effectiveness, and the timely provision of much needed public infrastructure and services to the people of Kenya. And this only happens in the realm of public-private partnerships, where the interests of the private sector and the interests of the public sector converge. And that area of convergence is where you have mutual interest. One, the interest of the private sector is to make money, and the interest of government is to provide that service. So for as long as we understand, and government must change its orientation in many sectors, that government is not in the business of business. Government needs to get out of business and let business do business, but government then creates the enabling environment, the framework, to let business thrive, because the interest of the government is to just provide services and to provide infrastructure to its people. We've seen a lot of areas where there are many pending projects. For instance, I know Kenya Pipeline has around 70 PPP projects on the line, on the pipeline, so to speak. If you look at the energy sector, many people who want to bring in energy into the grid, I think Turkana Wind Power is one of those, and many others. But even as we look at this bill, I hope the Finance Committee, and I can see Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., who's a member, ranking member of the Budget and Finance Committee, that when these fellows came to you, what they did not tell you is why from 2013 to them coming to you, despite having a legal framework at the national level, they've never had a serious PPP project in this country. Where is the problem? These amendments will not cure that issue. The amendments will also provide a similar framework at the county to what we have at the national government, or national level, but the problem that has been there that has prevented the private sector from engaging with the government on projects still exists. And that is where the solution must be done, whether it's lack of confidence in the word of government and certain things. You know, Mr. Speaker, when I come here and speak about demolitions and people ask me what is wrong with you, it's because I know what the sanctity of a title means to a private investor. So if they see on one hand that this government does not respect the sanctity of a title, and then tomorrow you invite the same people to come and invest on a place where the title is the basis, they will not come. Why do they have such a high appetite for government guarantees? They want a sovereign guarantee to do a PPP, yet they are not, it's not government borrowing. It's because of lack of trust, because of lack of political stability over those years. And I'm glad now I see a semblance of political stability. You know, I saw the handshake happened. We saw Kalonzo, the former Vice President, His Excellency, going to shake hands also. And that gives some calm. And it allows these investors to know that what they put in a country will last, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this bill then brings in county governments, and it's long overdue. We understand the principles of, in fact, let me not even say devolution, but fiscal decentralization. And if you look at those principles, Mr. Speaker, apart from one, the expenditure responsibilities that you assign to different levels, and that is done in the 4th schedule, you say counties do this, national government do this. Then from there we move to number 2. We say, okay, counties, you will raise money from this, national government will raise from this. That is in chapter 12 of the Constitution that provides revenue-raising mechanisms. Then now you go to number 3, which is the intergovernmental transfer, what we call the minimum 15% that we give to counties. Normally, Mr. Speaker, we start from the wrong place. We start from how much do we give counties. We've not looked at expenditure responsibilities because we've not costed functions properly. We don't know how much it costs to run health in Makueni. We just estimate and say, let's give 300 billion. People have been talking about wage bill, and they've been talking about, punguza mzigo and all of that without knowing where the real mzigo is. Mr. Speaker, today, if you get rid of everybody in parliament, including yourself, the Speaker of the National Assembly, all senators, all members of National Assembly, you will not have reduced our budget by 1%. You will not. If you decide to get rid of counties, all the money we take to the counties to pay speakers, MCAs, the money we give county governments for development and recurrent, you will have hardly scratched 15% of the budget. So focus must be on that larger amount, Mr. Speaker. And that is why I'm saying that once you go through those principles and come to, after the intergovernmental transfer, and go to what we call subnational borrowing. It's an international principle where you have fiscal decentralization. We have given our counties a raw deal. In the last dispensation, this Senate brought governors to task because of engaging, because the Constitution is clear that you must be guaranteed by the national government. Now, before the national government guarantees, and I'm sure you had a similar challenge in your previous life as a governor, the hurdles that you will be taken through as a county government to get a guarantee are too much. So, Mr. Speaker, even within this context, we must make sure that once you provide this framework, we're not putting hurdles so that county governments, again, 5 years from now, will not be able to have achieved projects through PPP in the same way the national government has not been able to achieve any projects based on PPP so far. I hope those who have listened which are coming on energy, on pipelines, on roads are done. Mr. Speaker, if you look at this bill, it talks about prioritization. You cannot do prioritization if you don't have access to information. Many of these projects, or even attempts at these projects, are shrouded with a lot of secrecy. You don't know where they started. You don't know whether the request for proposals was open, whether it was public. Mr. Speaker, the other day we had issues in Pumwani. After 3 days, we see the governor has named Sonko Pumwani at his partnering with the Aga Khan Hospital. No one has looked at it. The assembly has not discussed it. Mr. Speaker, one point that the budget committee failed to look at, and I hope we bring it in amendments, because of that component of access to information and the secrecy. And also because governors have this habit of hiding behind the provision that the Senate only oversights the shareable revenue from the national government, that these projects, the Senate must have a role to play because of the magnitude of these projects and the fact that we can then protect the interests of the counties and their governments. So a compendium of these projects, once they're prioritized, must then be brought to the Senate for the Senate to approve and say, yes, these are the kinds of projects that should go through PPP. So tomorrow you don't wake up and see Kivuda Kibwana maternity partnering with this. And it is not the priority, it's not what the people of Makueni want. You go to Mungoma, you see so-and-so has done this. You go to Migori, you see Obado has done this. No, there must be that process of accountability. And the Senate must play its role in intergovernmental fiscal relations by making sure that part of the approval process, once you've done RFP, of course, once you've done the CIDP, but once you've gone to the request for proposals and you've come in and you've said, out of my CIDP, and these are the projects I want to do as a county, these are the ones we want to take through PPP. And we can do it as quickly as we normally give them money. As quickly as we do the cash disbursement, is as quickly as we'll say in this financial year, these are the projects we're prioritizing for public-private partnerships. It's extremely important, Mr. Speaker, that we do that. Otherwise, we are creating a law that then, as senators, members of the National Assembly, leaders in counties, will be going to the counties and they're shocked. Oh, this is happening. It's a PPP. Oh, this huge building is being done. Oh, it's a PPP. Because then we'll be providing an avenue for instance, Senator Visiolo, to just find out from the grapevine that this medical thing is being done. She must have a role to play in that process, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also want to say that as we prioritize this project, let us not just look at the viability of a project on its own, in isolation, but projects must be looked at for them to go through PPP in terms of the viability vis-a-vis other projects that are being considered by the county. Mr. Speaker, at the national level, I've said, and I'm sorry, I know my leader of majority is here, my deputy, that I don't understand why, as a country, we are insisting on doing a 480 billion project to add another layer of road from Mombasa to Nairobi, yet we still cannot get jobs for our young people. We still are not able to provide, Mr. Speaker, just with 45 billion. a mass transit system for Nairobi City County. A metro system with trams, with light rail. Addis Ababa has done it at 457 million US dollars. In fact, theirs was alone, it wasn't even PPP. But today, if you do an expression of interest today, put it out there in The Economist, in the Time magazine, put it internationally, and say you're requesting for proposals, or you have an expression of interest for anybody who's willing to come and implement a mass transit system in Nairobi County. Build, operate, transfer, 10 years, collect the bus fare, collect the tolls. People will be falling over themselves at the door. The TVG of Paris will be here, the Qataris will be here, the Americans will be here, the Spanish will be here, because it is viable. This is a county of close to 6 million people transiting through it every day. It has the resources. It has a budget of 32 billion as a county annually. Just a 45 billion project can be paid back even in less than 10 years. But Mr. Speaker, by doing this project, you then are able to increase the economic viability of Nairobi. People don't spend hours in traffic on end. Today, if I want to go to Githurai from Nairobi, I just go to the station, I'm there in 5 minutes. There'll be predictability like it used to be when I was growing up in Nairobi, when you knew at 10 a.m. there's a Kenya bus coming, and number 42 will come from Huruma all the way to Kibera, does not have to go through town. You cannot have a 21st century country, city, modern city, fastest growing in this continent, with a 19th century transit system. So for me, I would prioritize that before I go to look for Bechtel or whoever it is who's doing that project to build another road from Mombasa to Nairobi. I would prioritize the provision of health facilities and go finish Mathare North Hospital, which has 320-bed capacity potentially. But it is a white elephant project, even from the time of the former governor of Nairobi. It needs just 2 billion to complete before doing a double-decker road in this country. So that's why I'm saying these projects, for their prioritization and for them to be actually factored as PPP projects, need to be brought to the Senate. And I'm appealing to members of Budget Committee to see the sense in that. Otherwise, governors will prioritize projects that give them direct benefit, one way or another, either political benefit or financial benefit that accrues to them. A big problem we're facing in this county, garbage. Yet in other countries, we have private companies fighting to buy garbage. They fight, they buy. In fact, there are countries that are net import, they import garbage because of waste to energy. If today we're able to structure properly as provision through which, of course, we still secure our young people. Senator Beth Mugo will tell you that our young people want to be involved in the estates. She knows she's a legend in leadership in Nairobi, so she understands. And her constituency used to reach here in town from all the way, it was a rural urban constituency. But she knows the dynamics. So you involve them, but make sure that you've set up a company together with the people, for instance, of Dandora, at the dump site, that then sources the garbage, collects it, processes it, and puts energy into the grid. And the profits then go back to the people, and they're able to pay back the county government. It is not rocket science. It will not take you 10 years to do. It can be done, but with the proper framework. Today, the reason you have a lot of garbage in the city, Mr. Speaker, let me tell you, is because we are paying people to collect garbage, but we're not paying them, instead of paying them to actually clean the city or to deliver that garbage. So today, if you give me a contract and you've divided Nairobi into lots, that I'm the one collecting garbage in Westlands, I'll collect it, but I'll dump it in Langata. See, you've paid me for collecting. But if the only way I will get money is that once I've taken it to the dump site, the kilos of that garbage are what determines my pay. And there's a weighbridge, and if my truck is this tons coming in, coming out, the difference. And that is the only way I'm paid. And I'm not on a retainer. I tell you, Mr. Speaker, private companies will fight for garbage. They will be seeing garbage and they scramble to pick it up. And you'll have a clean city. So we'll have sorted transport. We'll have sorted garbage collection. Our rivers will be clean. Nairobi River will be navigable. And we're able to provide without spending a shilling of public money, Mr. Speaker. So I would urge the committee, even as we move along, to help us really look at this law with a finer tooth comb, that we can be able to even probably have a kamkunje like we did on the other bills that came. I think physical planning, energy, and petroleum bill. On this one, so that we can tighten these provisions, not to make it harder for the counties to implement, but to make sure that we can truly reap the benefits of public-private partnerships. Because world over, that is what is now the new realm of development. That is where they're getting sourcing of financing projects, you know? So that Senator Ledamo Lekina does not have to go to South Africa to start measuring fences himself and saying, this is the fence I want for Mao. No, it will be done within this context. And you'll have a proper fence for the Mao to protect it, you know? So, Mr. Speaker, we support, but we hope that you can provide for us, as you have always done, in your true fashion, an opportunity as senators to engage deeper with this bill, tighten it, and make sure that we can give Kenyans what they deserve. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kilonzo Mutula Jr.
Thank you, Speaker. First, I want to say that I support this bill. Mr. Speaker, just like Senator Wetangula said, it has taken us quite a while to get to this position. In the recommendations that we made in the Select Committee on the impeachment of Governor Chepkwony, we insisted on regulations that would govern the PPP framework within county governments. Mr. Speaker, I'm aware that the PPP unit has been attempting to draft regulations, and which regulations, Mr. Speaker, once were drafted, they were unable to get a good framework in the Act itself that would anchor the regulations with counties. I'm aware, Mr. Speaker, that the county national regulations also came here, but the county ones have taken too long, far too long. Mr. Speaker, I'm now persuaded and convinced that this process, if this process, and I agree with Senator Sakaja, if this process is done well, the medical leasing equipment that is costing every county, Mr. Speaker, and this Senate must interrogate this issue. I will say this every day I stand here. 200 million every county, including Lamu and Nairobi and Makueni, doesn't make sense at all. These governors would have been allowed in a proper framework like this one to enter into a public-private partnership with other entities, whether it's Philips or whoever it is, who can provide the equipment they need, who can provide the expertise they need, and when they need it, but even then provide what would be, Mr. Speaker, current medical equipment. We have picked obsolete medical equipment. We have leased them for 7 years. I don't know what is going to happen after 7 years, because in true leasing, you return the equipment. Mr. Speaker, we have no framework for disposal of medical equipment. We'll have a problem about storing equipment we don't need, but at that time, Mr. Speaker, this country will have spent 63 billion shillings. This framework would allow our counties to enter into that framework properly. Mr. Speaker, I will only refer to one clause, which is the one that has bothered me. And I'm afraid, although I sit in this committee, the proposed amendment to clause 54A doesn't quite sit well with me. And this is the reason. In attempting to ensure that county governments mirror the national government, Mr. Speaker, in section 56, the option of approval is disjunctive, means that cabinet has the discretion to ask Parliament to approve a project under PPP. The words used in section 56 is or. Mr. Speaker, our amendments as a committee, and this particular one I disagree, uses the word or when it comes to the county assembly. Mr. Speaker, yes, it's here in the amendment. Have we reached a situation where we can allow governors of this country the discretion to enter into PPPs without concurrence of the county assembly? The answer is no. The word must be and at national level, and we must agree that at national level you have a better framework, a better mechanism. But since our mandate, special mandate, is to protect counties, we cannot mirror section 56 on clause 54A. To that extent, 54A5, which reads, a feasibility study completed under subsection 3 shall be approved by the county government prior to initiation of the procurement process for the project provided A, B, C, D, must read that it must go to the county assembly for approval before procurement. That is the problem that Governor Chepkwony had. So, Mr. Speaker, imagine Governor Chepkwony or any other governor entering into a 25 billion, like Governor Chepkwony did, in good faith, without the approval of the county assembly, committing a county like Governor Chepkwony did for 25 years. And the county assembly is not involved. To pass such a clause, Mr. Speaker, would be such an injustice to our counties. What Senator Sakaja is saying is correct, means that we can actually subcontract the work of garbage collection, etc., to private contractors and a PPP arrangement. But since the county assemblies are going to appropriate money for these public-private partnerships, they must be involved. In the case of Isiolo, we must say no to public-private partnerships in the matters of health, where the counties like Isiolo appear to have delegated the responsibility to a phantom company. That we must say no. That is not a public-private partnership. That is something akin to embezzlement. It's a fraud, where you open a joint account, where you transfer money to a third entity, where then that third entity takes money from the budget of health and pretends that they can offer health services, and it's an NGO whose objectives are not offering health facilities. That is called fraud. We cannot accept it. To the extent, Mr. Speaker, that this bill and this amendment bill at the beginning of this speaks of the provisions of this act shall apply to contracts for design, financing, construction, operation, equipping. This is medical leasing equipment. Management or maintenance of a project of the provision of public services undertaken as a public-private partnerships. I think that we must put a little more caveats when it comes to provisions of health. Mr. Speaker, my brother Senator Sakaja has talked about borrowing. Under Article 212 of the Constitution, counties are required now to borrow. There was a caveat to stop counties from borrowing in the first 3 years of devolution. The 3 years have lapsed, but there's no framework for approval. To answer Senator Sakaja on the question of involvement of the Senate, we toyed with the idea, but we do not want a situation where we micromanage these counties. We would rather a situation where, if it's a conditional grant, if it's a PPP project, if it's a loan under 212 of the Constitution, there should be a framework and a policy document that dictates how that reporting must come to the Senate, the same way the control of budget issues reports quarterly. So you say, for purposes of the conditional grants that Nairobi County has entered into with Danida or any other entity, every quarter, the control of budget must send a report to us so that we can ask questions as the project is ongoing. Because the process of approval, if the approval has to come to the Senate, Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid that at some point, maybe 20 years from now, when you have 3 projects per county or 5 per county, and each county is entering into a PPP, you would subject this Senate to a lot of paperwork and detail, which is not necessary for the Senate. But we can provide an audit. An audit in a quarterly basis, in the manner that I have proposed, would cure the problem that my brother Senator Sakaja is talking about. But
Senator Tula Kilonzo Jr., would you like to be informed?
Yes, Speaker.
Senator Sakaja.
Mr. Speaker, ordinarily, I would not interrupt my brother Mutula, Senator Mutula. But just to inform that my suggestion, my proposal is not that the Senate approves necessarily or denies, but the fact that access to information must be there, and the Senate must be notified when the compendium of projects that are to be subject to PPP are being sent through to the national government. So in that conveyor belt, the Senate must be there so that we know this is what, because again, we're the ones who give money to the counties. So that is the information I'm giving. Of course, it will be too much paperwork if we have to approve each and every project. That is the work of the county assembly. Let them do that. But let us be aware, so that even as we're doing a division of revenue bill, county allocation of revenue bill, we are aware of what the counties are trying to do with that respect. I'm sure you support that.
Thank you. I support that. That's why I'm saying that we have asked the CRA. CRA must come up with a policy. I've said that in the question of they picked Bungoma County, for example. I picked that example when I was debating Kara. The Bungoma County, in the 80 million shillings they have been given for the water towers, have no idea where that money is coming from, what it is for, who is going to oversight it, what it is going to do. The framework of how these approvals are done, whether it's a conditional grant, whether it's a public-private partnership, whether it's borrowing by counties, we must have a system through either control of budget or CRA, particularly control of budget, who is controlling the release of funds and who is checking whether they have complied, or even Treasury, because the regulations are going to come to us. What Senator Sakaja you're proposing, we can put it in the regulations to ensure that there's an approval mechanism where the information is coming to us for whatever reason, so that we can have it here. Mr. Speaker, would stop counties from engaging in what would be futile exercises like the one Isiolo is attempting to do. The Senator Murkomen had made a comment that the Committee of Finance must ensure that the committee that is going to approve this, either at national level and at county level, there must be the involvement of the county governments. Mr. Speaker, the report that we have tabled under a new subclause 4A includes the 3 persons nominated by the Council of Governors, so that then there's the Council of Governors and governors participating in the management of public-private partnership. Mr. Speaker, it has been said that county governments have not entered into public-private partnerships despite the fact that there is a national framework. Although the training has been done, it's important we say that the national framework does not provide for the approval of county assemblies. We simply can't allow governors to come to Nairobi and enter into PPPs through national government without consulting the people who have been elected at county assemblies. We must empower counties. We must give them teeth to bite. The only people who can do that is this Senate. And that is why I object to the proposal to mirror Section 56, which is disjunctive. It must be and, so that every county executive, Mr. Speaker, county government must seek approval of the county assembly or before PPPs are entered into. Mr. Speaker, the clause 54, as I finish, just to demonstrate that there are people in this country who think county government is county executive. We must correct the impression, even in this bill, that the National Assembly can pass a bill written county government, which in actual sense means county executive. County government, we must repeat every day like the Bible, includes county assembly. So when the marginal note reads procedure for approval by county government, and then the wording is county executive, Mr. Speaker, we must say that that is wrong. And therefore, we must provide, so that in the regulations, we provide the framework where these documents must go to the county assembly. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support. I hope this is one of those things that will cause the county assembly, the county government of Isiolo to step back. Take a chill pill and read the report of Chepkwony, where we nearly hung Governor Chepkwony. Governor Kuti must realize that there is, and he sat here with us when there was an attempt to impeach Governor Chepkwony. And we don't say this because we like Senator Dulo. We say this because it is the law. Whether it is Dulo or another person, the law will not change. It is as static as it can be. This idea of governors going behind the backs of Kenyans, and that's why I'm insisting, my dear senators and colleagues, please, let us make sure that our assemblies have a role to play in these things. We are looking at it now as 5 billion. In 20 years from now, 25 years, Counties will be able to do the sort of roads you're seeing the Chinese doing. We will enter into contracts with whoever we want. National government will step back, but we want to have a framework that can stand the test of time. It's time to show governors the true sense of devolution. It's a spirit of consultation, spirit of public participation, where you sit and you listen as opposed to dictating what you think is best for your county without the involvement of other leaders. The public participation, in my view, and sometimes when I speak to Senator Cherargei and I tell him, the governor of his county spoke at great lengths. We supported him. One of the bills that saw the light of day in this Senate was the county development boards. Mr. Speaker, we must find out what exactly happened to that case. Because why did we abandon the cause of a county development board? It addresses the concern of Senator Sakaja. If you have a county development board, irrespective of who is the chair, public-private partnerships, together with other matters concerning finance, will come to a table. Why are we ostracized when it comes to county matters? We are only important when we are passing the division of revenue and CARA. After we pass, we become bystanders in county governments. Senator Sakaja sees Pumwani in the newspapers like I do. This gentleman here, Senator Cherargei, sees the bank that the county government wants to establish 300 million in Viusasa and other places, as opposed to...
Order, Senator, where is that?
Viusasa is a platform created by Citizen TV. So I'm saying, instead of we senators listening and seeing some of these things in Viusasa, we will have a platform where we can have a voice, including the nominated senators. Senator Sakaja speaks about Beth Mugo. The experience that Senator Beth Mugo has on matters of health, whether it's Pumwani, whether it is matters of gender, you cannot take away the experience the good lady has. So let us have the involvement of everybody. I support an inclusive government. We must remove this thing where we senators become, as governors have seats, senators don't have seats. Cherargei is throwing stones everywhere because he has been excluded from the bank that the county of Nandi wants to establish. And when we tell these things, we must tell them straight on their face that what they are doing is wrong. Thank you.
Very well. I now give the floor to Senator Cherargei, but no stone throwing here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for this opportunity. I know most of my colleagues have elaborated more, and from the onset, I want to support this amendment. I think we are continuing to build capacity of most of our county governments, and I want to thank Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. because there is a wrong perception even in the national government and other stakeholders that the county governments means county executive. I think we should repeat, and I think our members of National Assembly, especially from my county, I will try and give them capacity building so that they get to know that county government does not mean county executive. It means county executive and county assembly. So we should repeat it, just like the good book of John 3:16, that everybody that goes to Sunday school is aware, of course with the exception of our brothers and sisters who are Muslims. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to say it's very important. I know coming at the backdrop, a few weeks ago, we were having problems with our county assemblies over unprecedented, sporadic, and unfortunate wave of impeachment of speakers in this country. And one of the challenges that our county assemblies are facing is the capacity, is the ability to understand their role, power that they should be having. And that is why in this second generation of devolution, in as much as our county assemblies, especially the MCAs, are trying their best to put their foot down, there are so many challenges. And this is some of the bills that we need to enrich the devolution going forward. Mr. Speaker, so I want to say it is important that, because you find nowadays, as let me start from where Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. spoke about, and I think like Victoria Economic Bloc, the good people, and I want to thank the people of Kakamega County, have moved to the High Court, and they are blocking the creation of a bank, or a bank that every of the 14 members was supposed to contribute 200 million. And I think Kakamega residents did move to the High Court, and they have challenged, they have not challenged, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I think every senator and every leader, we need to baptize some people that they should be aware that there is a new constitution that was promulgated in 2010. The reason, even the creation of Lake Victoria Economic Bloc, the reason the residents have moved to court is because of one thing. It is because of public participation. The 14 senators, 14 governors, sorry, Mr. Speaker, sir, including my very good friend, decided to sit down, taking some tea and mandazi, and decided that they should create a bank.
Order, Senator. Are you sure that was the menu?
I'm presumptuous because I'm a Kenyan. Every meeting, I don't want to infer other things because there could be some hot stuff that couldn't be taken, and I know. So, Mr. Speaker, the reason I'm just giving an example on the importance of this PPP. The reason they have moved to court is because of only one thing that is promulgated or is captured very well under Article 10 on the role of public participation. Public participation, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I know there is a bill that is before my committee, and one of my committee members is sponsoring, on how to conduct a proper public participation, does not mean where you are having some drink or having babysitting something somewhere or doing a birthday party, and then you imagine that you can pass critical, important things that matter to the people. And I want to say that no one is opposing on the improvement of our citizens across our counties. What we want to do is let us always yearn to do the right thing. And the right thing is to include the public. And therefore, I hope to see how that case goes. Of course, we are aware that under Article 10, the public participation is one of the key. And I know there are many cases that are lying before court, and where courts have taken a position clearly that public participation should be key. So I hope I have had, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I was trying to conduct the Cabinet Secretary in charge of devolution, Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, also on they are trying to come out on the policy that how do counties get themselves involved in the economic blocks. And I think I'm not aware whether Senate is represented. I wanted to find out from the CS, but I know in fullness of time we'll be able to include CS Wamalwa, because he had said that they are coming up with a policy as a Ministry of Devolution on how to assist counties engage in creating these economic blocks. Because, Mr. Speaker, sir, after the creation of economic blocks, because I had the vision that my 14 governors had was so rosy and nice, so that they were telling us now after we have formed this bank, we'll go now to China way, we'll go to Japan, we'll go to get foreign investors and come and sit down and bring mega projects across the western and part of Rift Valley or the entire Rift Valley, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I agree.
Senator Sakaja, what's out of order?
Mr. Speaker, sir, our standing orders are clear on the role of committees in this House. Is the good senator for Nandi who has really dismayed me and shattered my hopes for what is happening in this House, in order to say that he wants to ask CS Eugene Wamalwa how the Senate is involved in a matter that ideally he, as the chair of JLAC, together with the chair of devolution, should be informing the House on how counties are engaging in regional blocks. Is he in order to shuck off his responsibility as chair of Justice and Legal Affairs, where the Senate must be taking the lead, front, right, and center, front and center, on the issue of the legal framework for counties to engage in the regional development blocks and leave it to CS Wamala, who, as far as I can remember, has never been elected as a senator, Mr. Speaker.
What is it, Senator Tula Kilonzo Jr.?
It's even worse to admit that he doesn't know about regional blocks. The chairman is aware. He left early during the devolution conference. I was holding his brief that we were supposed, as a Senate, to have the legal framework for regional blocks. And therefore, Mr. Chairman, you better get up to speed about this issue. But the fact that the Cabinet Secretary has formed a caucus for regional blocks without involving the Senate, you should actually be complaining. But even then, don't complain. Bring the framework here as the Chairman of Legal Affairs. Thank you.
Senator Cherargei, what do you have to say?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I agree with the concerns of members, but if there is one of the hardworking chairmen of committees in this house, is one yours truly. And I know that one is not in doubt. Number two, I was just saying we have been trying to have engagement with the Cabinet Secretary on the policy, because we are trying also to come, that's a policy administrative level. We also must come up with a legislation that will guide the regional economic blocks among counties. And I think as a legal affairs committee, and one of my members, very committed members, Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., we have been in discussion. We have been, and I'm not complaining, we have been concerned on how we can buttress, on how we can freshen up that policy to ensure that Senate is fully involved. And I know it's just like, Mr. Speaker, sir, the privatization authority. And those are some of the questions you have been raising, because some of the agencies that are supposed to be privatized by the national government, you find that no role that Senate has been given, and some of those agencies are found within counties. And I think and I want to thank Senator Sakaja for that. As the chair of JLAC, we'll take the necessary step. And of course, I'm a member of Jubilee, and it is not fair. And I know Senator Sakaja is the founder of Jubilee, and it would not be fair of course, we want to engage. I wouldn't want to say at this point that Cabinet Secretary Wamalwa has divided or has not engaged us, but we are in the process of engaging him and ensuring we move forward. Mr. Speaker, sir, the reason I was saying that is that I was just giving that some of these things that counties pass, and I want to thank that the list should be submitted to public-private partnership, and this amendment also has brought the issue of priority list. And I know our counties have unique priority lists. Just like when you go to northeastern counties, the priority list might not be as, maybe it is infrastructure and water, but maybe when you go to Rift Valley, where I come from, maybe what is priority is the issue of agriculture and maybe infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, so I think on this public-private partnership unit, and Mr. Speaker, if you look at the records, in 2016, and then my county government wanted to move to buy through what we call financial leasing. They wanted to acquire construction equipment. At that point in time, the High Court in Eldoret held our same view that we need a guarantee, a loan guarantee according to Article Chapter 12 on issues of public finance. And I think these are some of the things that if we allow counties to do without having such public-private partnership unit and also priority, Mr. Speaker, sir, it will not be very good for our counties. And therefore, I agree that we need, and I think Senator Dulo has talked about the issues of medical that is happening back in Isiolo County. Mr. Speaker, sir, for example, the other day in my county, there is an agreement of special economic zone where the county government decided to bring in an investor at the border of Chemasa and Kisumu County. That is the border of Nandi and Kisumu County. And the people, the population were not aware until I made noise. Yet the county assembly was never involved. There was no public participation. but the investor was already on site. And I know there are many counties that have gone into agreement with special economic zone. Yet there is no proper involvement of the public. There is no proper guideline to the county governments. Say that you just find a governor, goes somewhere, just decides to go abroad, travel abroad alone, decide to enter into some agreements. The county assembly is not aware. Only the governor, not even the county executive are aware. And I think, Mr. Speaker, this amendment is very timely so that at the end of the day, we can give the necessary priority in terms of it. Mr. Speaker, sir, the issue of capacity, I think it has been captured well on technical expertise so that some of these MOUs, some of these engagements, some of these processes that the counties are undertaking, sometimes they do it out of ignorance. They do it because of lack of technical expertise and capacity. And I hope even the county assemblies will be given opportunity, be given that technical advice or expertise. They should be given that capacity. Say that before they allow county executive to approve any MOU with any investor, with any necessary procedure or infrastructure, they should be aware. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think what is important is they have seen the bill, the amendment has come up with the issue of evaluation, and therefore so that we make sure our people, I know there is audit already that is provided by this PPU, the unit that has been created through this amendment, and I think through evaluation, say that by the time even the county assembly approves or rejects, through the evaluation report, they should see public interest as a priority before passing any issue, Mr. Speaker, sir. And that is why I like this amendment, because they have said let us have priority projects. Because as a matter of fact, for example, just like the issue of Lake Victoria Economic Block, it is not a priority to come up with a bank, yet the residents of 14 counties maybe do not have challenges of roads, have challenges of bursary, have challenges of healthcare. So in this aspect of priority list that it has been come up, it is very important, because even as you prepare the evaluation report, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is very important that the county assembly that is provided for will be factored in. It gives a county government a right to enter into public, and I think it is important because so that we don't find strangers. Mr. Speaker, sir, when you go to a place called Karebe Gold Mine, there is a very good investor there. But because of that, the investor was brought.
Where is that, Senator?
That one is in Nandi County, a place called Chemelil Chemase Ward in Tindre Sub-County. I'm just using an example so that you can see how county government has been excluded. You find those people are perpetuating their own issues. Maybe they are doing mine. You know, it's the leading gold producer in this republic, Mr. Speaker, sir. And one of these days when you are walking around, I know you are a person who walks around the country to interact with the people and also listen to the well-being of our citizens, our country, and you know your future is bright. You never know what it might happen in the near future. So it shows the Karebe Gold Mine Company are mining gold. But do you know, Mr. Speaker, this is an investor, but do you know county government cannot access? Because they have put dogs on the gates. They don't know what they are doing there. Maybe they are using mercury that can cause cancer to the residents of Chemelil Chemase. And therefore, I think if such amendment had already been passed, the county government of Nandi could have had unlimited access and address the complaints that the people have against the investor. It is because it took the advantage because this amendment was not already in place. And I think it is very important for our people so that in any time that we need to do a PPP agreement, they must be given so that they can allow. And even these priority projects that majority leaders are already spoken about, that the county government should be part of it. Such that even it allows the issues of monitoring, the issues of evaluation, and you know, of course, I don't doubt the wisdom of the majority leader, having been my law lecturer. So
how much can we do with 15 trillion shillings? Because that is what can be seen from the radar. Recently, we had the president of Geneva, of Switzerland, coming here to say they have $1 billion. Everybody saw that. If that money was to be channeled back through PPP, because it's private equity, even if it is stolen, I mean, how much more can it do to transform this country? So that's also another question that we need to ask. Is there a way we can have a PPP framework, and this is a question of being pragmatic, that enables people who have looted from their own country to return the money for public investment? Because this money, fellow senators, is actually building other people's economy, while we're still strangled in poverty and going to borrow with very high interest rates. Is there a way we can tap this money back through this framework? Can we have creative provisions in law that would enable such kind of an engagement? Because even if you say it's a question of just using the legal mechanism and the asset recovery and the corruption thing, by the way, you may not make a lot of progress. Maybe going forward. And you can already see there are serious challenges of cash flow because of this 1 million shilling. There's a 1 million shilling ceiling when you are making transactions. All of us, I'm sure, have been subject to that. There is a pastor at CBK, and I congratulate him for being a very good pastor, Dr. Njoroge. So people are not able to invest fraudulent monies through using the financial system. But then they're hiding this money in the pillows. They're in the mattresses. And then, of course, there's the issue of circulation. So, but then how do you tap into that? So it's not just a question of provisions of law. Again, you need to move further and ask yourself this question philosophically. Where are we? Can we develop using corruption money? Have there been economies that have developed so? And then would you then curtail other people from being corrupt in the fight against corruption? So it's a wider debate. Because why we are here, Mr. Speaker, is because we have exhausted our borrowing capacity. Yet projects need to be done. Everybody who is here, even if as senators we don't have any kitty, and people don't see us as a development agents or interlocutors, but primarily when we are demanding for equitable share of counties, what we are asking for is projects. And you can see there has been a very great increase in terms of the money that we are sending down as conditional grants, essentially from donors. So it's a wider debate, and I think it is welcome. But I would still want to insist, Mr. Speaker, that we do not just rush this to the committee of the whole. I know there's agency with regards to the pending projects under the Big Four agenda, but can we have informal sessions where we can inform and interrogate ourselves so that whatever proposal that we can make then would carry us through with regard to this new form of fiscal financing? Mr. Speaker, I support.
Senator Ayako.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this debate. Now, Mr. Speaker, this is a very important, an extremely important bill. And Mr. Speaker, it is a bill that I support with certain reservations. And I would like to amplify what Senator Mwaura said, that we need more time to look at this bill, either within the regulations we have in this House or within a more relaxed setting. Now, Mr. Speaker, I have had the privilege of listening to Senator Dulo, who passionately talked about difficulties she was experiencing as a senator from Isiolo, and the fact that the county government of Isiolo has deliberately circumvented or bypassed, her office and other establishments and entered into what they claim to be a PPP contract for provision of health. Now, Mr. Speaker, when I listened to her, it was a litany of complaints. It was a situation of helplessness. And Mr. Speaker, there was indication that a lot of things were passing, below the radar without the ability of the very good senator, who is my friend, to have a positive contribution or input to it. Mr. Speaker, I also listened to Senator Wetangula, and Senator Wetangula was very clear that this is a timely bill. It's going to unlock potential for growth, partnership, and development in counties, something that we truly need. Now, Mr. Speaker, what is clear here, and a bit of it was captured by Senator Sakaja, is that the role of the Senate is not amplified in this matter. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the constitutional responsibility of the Senate, you will find that the Senate has been given the responsibility of, among other things, protecting the interest of counties. The Senate has equally been given the responsibility of being a platform through which citizens can exercise their sovereignty. Now, it is assumed that what is within any county and any country is owned and controlled by citizens, and when part of that is contracted out to private persons, the citizens cede part of their sovereignty to the party to which that contract is made, or the party that is sharing that contract with the county or with the citizens. So it touches on the sovereignty of the citizens, and I think the body that is properly mandated to protect the sovereignty of the citizens in the context of counties is the Senate. I have looked at the bill, and I have not seen the role of Senate provided. So when I had my sister Fatuma lament that untoward things were happening in Siolo, I got concerned that we have authority here, but we are letting that authority disappear by trying to rely on the county assemblies. Where I come from, Mr. Speaker, which is Migori County, we are known for very extreme things. And our county assembly in Migori has never raised a finger about the extreme things that we are known for in Migori, including suspicion of murder most foul, including suspicion that public funds are offshore in other nations that should have been available for use. And our county assemblies have never done anything. In fact, I've taken time to look at what they debate, and I've also taken time to look at what is debated in Homa Bay. What is debated in Homa Bay and Migori are quarrels over who gets an allowance to do what. They never think about what is affecting the public. They never think about what is important to those counties. So if we are to sit here as a Senate and think that we are protecting counties by providing or by ceding or abdicating our responsibility constitutional to protect counties and leaving it to the county assemblies, I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, that sometime down the road we'll have abdicated our duties, we'll have been party to robbing of the public blind by allowing the county assemblies to be the port of call when it comes to oversight. I had Senator Sakaja indicate, together with Senator Mutula, that it would be difficult to grant approval as Senate for these PPP projects because there will be too much paperwork. Mr. Speaker, I believe we are elected by many people. I believe that we are remunerated well. We would like to have better remuneration, and I believe that we should sit here and go through paperwork that will protect the counties that we represent. Mr. Speaker, I believe that we have specialized committees that can look at all of these requests and perhaps bring them to the attention of plenary if need arises. And I believe that in this bill, there could be a provision for tabling of a request for approval of a PP project, and if no particular senator objects to it, then it can be deemed to have been passed without objection. So that would expedite the process. But to sit here and say that we do not have time to go through details when we are actually abdicating our responsibility to protect the rights and the interest of our counties, that would be quite unfair. Getting elected is a difficult thing, and people look up to you as a person who is going to protect their interest and to take your time and pour through voluminous documents and see what the interests are all about. I believe that even if we do not talk about approving each and every PP project, then we need to have a certain threshold of projects that have to come before the Senate. And a project of that kind that quickly comes to mind is a project that perhaps would bind a county government to a period beyond its elective tenure. A project that binds a county government to a period beyond 5 years. So if there is the possibility of contracting out a service, the possibility of contracting out anything that would have overlap the tenure of a county government, that includes both the assembly and the executive, then it would be important that such a project is brought to the attention of this august house, so that posterity, people who are beyond that mandate, because we are given mandate every so often 5 years, and you find that governors who are overzealous go out there and contract, rights beyond their mandate, and the people who are left behind are the ones who will be relating to this project for periods beyond 5 years. So it is not sound argument, it's not persuasive in my view, that we should shy away from pouring through the paperwork by saying that it is too much. I believe through our committees, and we can establish a committee that looks at it, so that when it is brought before the plenary, or when a member representing a particular county picks it as something of interest, that member may raise it and it can be debated. If you listen to what colleague senators who have spoken before me are saying, they are basically saying that we should be a rubber stamping Senate, and that the issues of oversight should be done after all these processes have been concluded. I am cognizant of the fact that in the bill there is a provision of an approval being granted by a unit. There is a provision for feasibility studies being carried out and such provisions. But those provisions, in my view, Mr. Speaker, are not equivalent to protecting the interest of the public. Those entities, just like the county assemblies, do not take elective responsibility for being voted to protect. When a unit of a unit or a government agency is given the sole right to review a particular project, I believe in the interest of sovereignty, I believe in the interest of protection, constitutional protection of interest of our county governments. It is important to create a right and a duty as a last point of port of call, that this House should have a say over approvals of projects of this kind. Mr. Speaker, I have also looked at this bill, and I have looked at the bill that it seeks to amend. what I have noticed is there is no provision for sanctions, criminal or otherwise, for people who violate the provisions of the bill. I think there is a need to introduce an amendment to this bill to provide for what I'm mentioning, but specifically to provide for sanctions against responsible officers who rush and expose the public to risks without adhering to the requirements of the bill. Mr. Speaker, this bill is important, but as a House, I am of the considered view that we should do as best we can to ensure that we do not allow overzealous people to do things that would expose our counties to risks. I personally come from a county that is full of risks. I am neighbored by counties that are full of risks. And my brother from Kericho is very knowledgeable of such risks. I had contributions here that the governor of Kericho escaped through the eye of a needle because of the magnanimity of Senate. But we should not be a house of magnanimity. We should be a house of law. We should be a house that protects the interests of our people without favoring some people or being kind to others as our people continue to wallow in abject poverty, as billions of shillings are stashed in other counties or in other nations whereas they are expected to be around in our counties to execute or expedite issues that relate to development. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to promise that I'll be bringing an appropriate amendment to areas where I think are of concern. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well spoken, Senator Yako, but those words are anything but few. Senator Msuruve.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to really thank you for giving me an opportunity to add my voice to this bill. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that our role as a Senate is very clear, that we represent the counties and we also protect the interests of the counties. And Mr. Speaker, as we are protecting the interests of the counties, there's need also for this Senate to ensure that Mr. Speaker, we ensure that the county assemblies are actually strengthened. The county assemblies are given the power to perform their duty as mandated, Mr. Speaker. Like, Mr. Speaker, building capacity of the county assembly members is very important, especially, Mr. Speaker, in this area of public-private partnership arrangement, Mr. Speaker, because when the county assembly members are empowered, then they would be able to perform their mandated duties with ease, because they'll actually be able to question some issues objectively, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, in that way, then the county assembly members will be strong enough. They will not just, we'll have given them actually teeth to bite. So they will not just be a toothless bulldog. Mr. Speaker, I want to really support issue of consultation when it comes to public-private arrangement, Mr. Speaker. There is need for consultation at county level. There is need also for public participation on whatever projects that are going to take place in the counties, Mr. Speaker, so that whatever projects that are there, Mr. Speaker, they have the goodwill of the people. When a project has the goodwill of the people from the ground, Mr. Speaker, and public participation has been done objectively, Mr. Speaker, even when the project is on course, everybody will be happy about the project, and the many complaints that go concerning projects that have started and have not gotten that public participation will not be there, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, there's need for approval right from the county assemblies. Mr. Speaker, even as we are talking about this public-private partnership projects. There's need also, and I support this, that there's need for a study to be done, a feasibility study, Mr. Speaker, to be done, so that the feasibility study will reveal whether the project is viable or not. And if the project is viable, do we have any risks that are, unforeseen risks, and also risks that are really visible, so that the visible risks can be actually attended to, and then the unforeseen risks, what next? Like in the issue where maybe a deal goes sour and then there are liabilities. So where do the liabilities go, Mr. Speaker? So there's need for proposals also to be done. And in the proposal also, there's need also to see in the proposal how do county governments stand in to benefit from the project, Mr. Speaker. So it is also important that even when a proposal is being done, it's important also that procurement of whatever is agreed upon is done in a procedural manner, is done in a manner that is transparent, in a manner that will not leave question marks in the county with regard to what was procured, who was given the tenders and all that. Mr. Speaker, I support this bill, but I want to say that there's need for policies to be put in place to ensure that these procedures are done in a manner in which there's a win-win situation for both the public and the private in the partnership arrangement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. I support.
Thank you. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me a chance to also add my voice on this very important bill. And from the onset, I want to say that this is a very timely bill, and it is also a constitutional bill. This bill seeks to align PPP or private partnership programs to the county government structures. And I think this bill will promote more development in our counties. This public-private partnership is going to be able to leverage or help our counties to get more funds, to fund big infrastructural development projects which our normal allocations will not be able to cater for. In our counties where we come from, there are quite a number of developments that our people need. Modern structures, even the very basic needs like roads, like waste management, very important projects that our counties are not able to fund them. This public-private partnership will be able to leverage this situation. Mr. Speaker, this public-private partnership also will bring many actors in place. And this will mean more expertise, more technological methods, effective and efficient managerial skills, which are actually in our private sectors. When you look at private companies today, and private institutions and private organizations today, they perform very, very well because they have good managerial, open, transparent managerial skills, and they also have efficient and effective ways of managing these projects. And therefore, this bill will bring some good energy to the public sector if we get to partner with them. Another thing that this bill seeks to bring is a situation where the public can also, the public through the county governments can also be able to offer what they have. Like many of our counties have huge pieces of land, but they may not be able to have that capital, that financing ability to finance mega projects which can help our counties. But this bill will seek to bring actors that can finance these mega factories, mega companies, mega institutions that will recruit more of our youth, that will give more enterprises opportunities to our women, to our youth. And therefore, this public-private partnership will open ways of developing our counties. This public-private partnership will also be able to give our counties a room to be able to give what they have. Like if they have land, they have resources like raw materials, like we have many of our counties with minerals, but they may not be able to add value on the minerals they have or on the raw materials they have. But when we allow the public-private participation, I think we shall open up our counties. But at the same time, Mr. Speaker, I also have a few issues that are not highlighted in this private-public participation or partnership bill. One of them being the approval of these projects by the county assembly and the approval of these projects by Senate. Because Senate is it's mandated to oversight projects done by counties and also oversight the projects and allocations that are going to the counties. And therefore, to overlook at their mandate in these particular projects that are going to be done by private participation, then it will mean this House will not be able to tell what projects are these that are funded from the private-public participation partnership. Another thing that lacks in this very good bill is the approval by the county assembly of these bills. I have seen that there is a committee, a county committee, that will write the proposals, that will write the priorities of the counties and forward them for approval. The approval is not stated who is supposed to approve. I would really wish to see the county government, the county assembly being given a mandate to look at and scrutinize these proposals and these projects that are going to be funded by the private-public partnership. Another thing is this bill is not also stating which nature of projects can we do with this private-public partnership, so that we don't just allow our counties to enter into, let's say, even a very small kind of a project that is already allocated money. We already allocate monies to counties for water, for agriculture, for all other functions that are allocated for in the Schedule 4. So we need to take note that, or we need to be able to know which are these particular projects we need to allow the county government to enter into agreement with a private-public partnership, so that we don't have a duplication of funds. Some funds coming from the national government going to the same project, and some other funds going coming from private actors going to the same projects. And therefore, this bill needs to be very, very specific on the projects that we can enter into the partnership through our counties. Another thing that I see within the public-private partnership bill that has not come out very clearly is the levels of these committees. These committees need to be decentralized. They need to be in the counties, and also they need to be in the national government. We also need to look at the funding procedure so that we don't take debts in the national government level, and we also take debts and loans in the county government, so that at one particular time, we may not be able to pay back the loans that we get from different organizations and different countries. Another thing that this bill should have at least explained is the consultation, the public participation in the framework. How are we going to involve the public? What can the public do in case this private actor refuses to enter into an agreement, refuses or breach the law? What are the penalties? Because it's not very, very, very clear. Otherwise, I think this bill is timely, and I think with some few amendments on the issues of county assembly approvals and the Senate approvals of these projects, I think this will be a very important bill, because it will bring out clearly who will enter into which agreement, which county projects are going to be done through this PP public-private partnership, and how it will help the people of those counties. I think it is an important bill, and therefore I support.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Jeriot Aaron Kipkirui.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this chance. Madam Speaker, I was elsewhere committed just immediately after the Leader of Majority began his moving notes for this particular bill. While the meeting I was chairing was a bit urgent, I kept on praying and hoping that by the time we are done, I'll be able to come back to the House and make my submissions about this particular bill. Madam Speaker, this bill is extremely important. This is a game changer in matters devolution, and this is a bill that we need to treat with extreme importance. Despite it being fairly urgent, there are a few things that, unless they are properly addressed in this bill, it will make it a bit, I personally will not be very comfortable supporting it, Madam Speaker. But at the moment, the whole idea and the context, I agree with the framework of the drafters on what they want to achieve. The history, various members have gone into it. And Madam Speaker, it will be important to note that at the beginning of this year, when I wrote my New Year resolutions, as we do many of the times as human beings, I noted that as part of the legislative things that I want to achieve is to pass a PPP bill that will enable our county governments enter into this kind of projects. When I came and wanted to request part of the drafting and that kind of a team, I was informed of another bill, this particular bill now, that was before the National Assembly, and therefore I shelved my desire to do this kind of a law with a hope that this bill, when it eventually comes, it will address many of the challenges and the things that were in my mind at that particular time. It is important, and I know when one of the senators was speaking, they did point out that my county, the county I represent, Kericho, was actually the first county to enter into a dispute between the Assembly and the Executive as regards PPP projects, Madam Speaker. And it even led to the impeachment of our governor. And therefore, this is something that I have seen, because I understand so well what PPP can do for our county governments. This is in relation to our work as defenders of devolution and people who are tasked with coming up with the legislation to ensure that we continue the process of devolving power down to the people and ensuring that the people have a right to self-determination at the local level, whereby they get to sit down and determine and say, this is what is priority for us. This bill, Madam Speaker, and we had an opportunity to listen to presentations that were made before us as a committee, and I sat through a number of them. And many of the people that spoke to us were primarily concerned that despite the fact that we are so aware and alive to the fact that Kenya has 2-tier levels of government, up to now, when it comes to determination and agreeing on who gets to undertake which particular project, there seems to be a particular obsession that the national government will always do better than county governments. If the submissions and what we have been reading lately in the media about what has happened with the least medical equipment is true, then the converse of that argument is what holds to be true. I do not believe at the top of my mind that national government has the best capacity in everything to determine everything for counties. That is a fallacious argument that we should not continue to enshrine here in the Senate. Unfortunately, some of the provisions of this bill smack out of that, Madam Speaker. When you read it clearly, that you realize, of course, one of the overviews you're told is that they want to provide empowerment for contracting authorities by granting them the permission to reserve certain projects for disadvantaged group and ensuring that county governments are considered also as contracting authorities. When national government does its major projects, for example, either PPP or the ones that are granted by loan, SGR, the ones for the wind power in Turkana, who did they consult? Absolutely nobody. It's a decision that is made by national government, and eventually all of us from the 47 counties that are gathered here will eventually pay. To the best of my knowledge, I would think that we will be proposing that, yes, it is important to have the PPP unit. The composition is something that we also need to look at, that despite the fact that the objects of what we are trying to achieve is to make sure that county governments have the capacity, we only have 2 representatives of county governments. And that bothers me, Madam Speaker, because if we are determining and we are saying that eventually what will happen is that when counties present the list of priority projects before this particular unit, there'll be a team of national government officials, maybe about 6 to 10 of them, but only 2 representing county governments. Surely, what are we saying? Then the neater thing for us to do is, and we had said this in the committee, unfortunately I haven't been able to clearly scrutinize the report to see if it is included, is that then let us have a capping, so that if your county collects revenue of 400 or 500 million, because these projects can determine also the capacity of a county to absorb debt, then 3, 4, 5 times the number of revenue that you collect. If your county that collects 500 million a year, then we can pick a figure of 5 and say for projects up to 2.5 billion, let us have our county governments, our county assemblies to approve. Let the county executive propose, enter into them with the approval of county assemblies. This continuous obsession with national government that we continue to inculcate every now and then as we do laws, I think it's not fair to county governments. And when Council of Governors appeared before us and shared with us their views about it, I think they gave very good views about that particular trend. Madam Speaker, I would also propose that Section 24(3) be amended so that you add, in consultation with county governments through the Council of Governors, immediately after the Cabinet Secretary. It will be a great injustice. We will be left with a big dent on our face if, as the Senate, we allow this law to pass as it is, where all the final determination is made by the cabinet secretary alone without the input of Council of Governors. Yet we pride ourselves as being the defenders of county governments, Madam Speaker. Therefore, that is I had said during my initial submissions that there are no non-negotiables. The first one is on the figure that county assemblies should be able to approve. The second one is this one for making it to be able to, for consultations, make it provided a provision of the law that this should be in consultation with county governments. The fourth and the final one is that a replica of the format used in drafting PFM Act of 2012, it should separate actually the provisions of the approval of county PPPs from the one from national. Because what this appears, it appears to be only specific to having one unit. It's still in support of what I'm saying, so that at the level of our county assemblies, they should be able to easily domesticate this law and pass it for them, say, okay, while our qualification maybe might be 2 or 3 billion Kenya shillings, but for this current tenure of this county government, we want to cap it at 1 billion shillings. For them, allow them. Let us stop this continuous belittling of our county assemblies and imagining that despite the kind of behavior that they exhibit sometimes, many of our county assemblies are made up of people who are extremely qualified, sometimes even better than us. And therefore, that will be my third and final non-negotiable, which I think when it comes to the committee of the whole, we should be able to push through as an amendment. Otherwise, it will be difficult. Protect me from leader of majority, Madam Speaker, who you know. Anyway, I take back my words, but I know what I wanted to say is that sometimes he wants to shove bills down our throats so quickly with very little regard to what county governments are doing.
What's your point of order, Senator Murgomen?
The Speaker, is in order for Senator Cheriot to use threats, intimidation, Madam Speaker, in canvassing a position he has. Madam Speaker, it is non-negotiable between him and who? When he says that he has 3 non-negotiable positions in this bill, it is in whose negotiation is he talking about?
Senator, I think you missed him. He had actually outlined it at the beginning before you came in here, that there were things he was going to negotiate in the house of the committee. If I got you right, Senator Jeriot?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Thank you for helping the ever-enthusiastic but never-present majority leader. Anyway, I have said that I will try and persuade my colleagues.
Why are you inviting trouble every time, Senator Jeriot? Senator Murgomen?
Madam Speaker, I want from your chair for you to order the clerk's office, Madam Speaker, to demonstrate who has contributed more in his house, Madam Speaker, and be computed by man-hours. Then, Madam Speaker, even if it will take you 2 months, you make a ruling as to who is ever present and who is scarcely present, Madam Speaker, because...
Senator Leader,
why
are you directing the Speaker? Why don't you have a point of order?
Madam Speaker, is it in order for Senator Cheriot, Madam Speaker, to try to insinuate that I am not present in this house, Madam Speaker, when the records of this house, Madam Speaker, will be unveiled, it will show, Madam Speaker, that my presence in this house and my contributions, Madam Speaker, which are in the Hansard, Madam Speaker, would be that I have had 4 times, I've more than 4 times been more present in this house than the young senator of Kericho.
Honorable Senator Jeriot, can you please wind up?
You know, maybe what you need to add, Madam Speaker, is also the number of hours of listening, not just talking and leaving. That is what I alluded to. Anyway,
you are
Madam
looking for
Speaker,
trouble again.
I have that is my conclusion. By and large, I say that when we eventually come to the committee of the whole, I will really try and persuade my colleagues that those 3 particular things, let us ensure that they are put into this bill so that we secure devolution family. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Zani Agnes Philomena.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And like we do in the Senate, really concentrating on counties and ensure that counties' abilities can be unlocked 100% to ensure that they can be productive. And we know that counties are allocated money from the exchequer, but we also know that money is not enough. And yet there's a lot to be done within these counties in developing the infrastructure of those counties and ensuring that a county is almost able also to unlock its own resources so that the members of that county can actually benefit from that. And I think many governments, county governments have been trying to do that to a large extent. Only the process has been left more or less strictly to sort of the governors themselves at that level. And some governors have been well-meaning, trying to actually ensure that they can actually get into public-private partnerships and be able from that process to unlock the potential of their counties. But sometimes it has caused problem, and it has actually been mainly at an individual level. I think this bill addresses that, where it suggests that county assemblies need to be put into consideration or to be involved, especially in the approval. So a county government contracting authority shall seek and obtain the approval of the county assembly. I think that is important. And also in the provision that the county government shall not execute a project agreement without first seeking and obtaining approval from the National Treasury, so that there is a synergy and a linking that is put into place in terms of the resources that are actually there. PPPs in Kenya are very, very critical. In fact, these are very, very important in terms of reducing the funding gap for infrastructure that is now estimated at about $50 million over the next years. So it is gainsaid that it's important for people to engage into PPPs, especially in terms of partnerships. Very, very critical. It also helps in reducing the government borrowing and associated risks, because the partner brings in money and is also part and process of executing that particular process to ensure that the money is well used. It also provides a new source of investment capital right from the source. It drives the creation of local funding and enables the markets, therefore, to be able to create and use that funding adequately. Another very important reason why it's critical to have PPPs is that it helps because the private partners don't step out. So not only are they giving funding, but they're also coming in with their expertise, and they're able to utilize the efficiency of private sector in running the public sectors. So they're able to catapult the processes within the counties. All this is important, Madam Speaker, because in the long run, it actually helps to have create job creation, because then that unlocking of the county will be able to have more members really be able to utilize. If it is an infrastructural project, there'll be part and parcel of it, jobs will be created. If it is a health project, also that will happen. But I think the problem has been in many counties, for example, where that private partnership, public-private partnership does not reap fruit, and where a debt is actually created, and there's no recourse to how that should be utilized or how the gap should be filled, then that creates a problem, because it creates a situation where county governments might find themselves running bills for projects that they started. Maybe they did not look at those projects properly. They did not look at the feasibility studies for those particular projects. They did not look at how those projects was going to unlock capital. Maybe they were over-ambitious, for example, and then they create a situation where the project has started, but that project cannot be proceeded with. And that's why in this particular bill, where it clearly states that it's important that feasibility studies are done in 54 subclause 3, where there will be feasibility study assessment that need to be put into operation, so that right from the beginning, people enter into projects, but after assessing those projects, after being able to project, after being able to do evaluation reports, after those evaluation reports being vetted, after the reality of the viability of that project are actually being put on the table, then it's possible then to be able to engage. And that process is encouraged. And therefore, it doesn't become a one-man or a one-woman show, Madam Speaker. It becomes the issue of concern for the whole county and the expertise of that county is also brought into the fore to ensure that that happens. It also says that it will be necessary to prepare project proposals, and these will be approved at the county government level, and these will also detail the strategic and operational benefits of entering into such an agreement. And this really just guides that a PPP agreement is not entered into which is not macro in terms of its approach, in terms of benefiting people, but just remains micro, so that at the end of the day, these proposals can actually be vetted and looked at. A county government may also enter into a PPP agreement and shall be responsible for the administration of the overall. So that now we have a situation where we don't have everything left to one partner, that the private partnership and also the county government is cognizant and keeps in sync, so to speak, with that particular project and how that particular project is executed. So to be in charge of the overall project development cycle and in accordance with this section, ensure that all these provisions a liaison therefore needs to be put into place so that even the success of the PPP or its failure is not just an issue that is left with one person, but it's left with everybody else. And indeed, Madam Speaker, when you think about it, when so many people have been involved in the process, then it is less likely that you're going to find a situation where a PPP agreement has been put into place and there are problems with it. It will be possible for somebody with an oak eye, somebody with the expertise, somebody with the knowledge to identify that this is a problem. Here we have a quagmire, here we have a lacuna, here we're not sure how we're going to fill it, here we're going in the wrong direction. So I think the participatory mood and public participation that is emphasized in this amendment bill is critical in ensuring that people move in the right direction. Indeed, Madam Speaker, provisions are also made at Clause 8, where it will be important for this particular process to have a priority list, and this will be subject to the approval of the county governments, so that there is a process, because there might be more than one PPP agreement within the county, to have an understanding even within that county of what is important, what is not important, what comes first, what comes second, and that provision is put into place and can be discussed at the various points. And therefore, this is submitted to the unit for publication along the national government priority list. So not only is there a priority list within the counties, but there's also a priority list in comparison with the national government goals, and this together enables a more targeted development procedure within that particular county. So for whatever it is that the PPP agreement is being put in, it's very important, as emphasized in this amendment bill, that every contract for the design, financing, construction, operation, equipment, management or maintenance of a project, or for the provision of public services are taken as a public-private partnership, that the provisions in this act will apply to the contract. So for any of the facets, for construction, for operation, for equipping, then the responsibility is given also specifically to the county, and they are meant to apply the particular provisions. Madam Speaker, the amendment bill also gives various definitional updates or amendments that have been made, and I think these are meant to actually highlight and make the responsibility areas very, very clear. For example, contracting officer and what that means, and transaction advisor and what that means, and this has been clearly stated. Because I think as far as PPPs are concerned, everybody probably starts with a goodwill. But the more private it is kept and the more singular it is kept, I think this bill tries to address the problem of issues that come as a result of singularity, rather than a broad spectrum of people getting involved and a majority of people getting involved, and without having the specific rules put into place to ensure that PPPs are able to unlock the procedures and unlock the issues that are meant to unlock within the counties. Because an adoption of a PPP framework reflects the desire for improvement, quality, quantity of a particular service and its provision. It should be aimed at cost effectiveness to ensure that at the end of the day it has been utilized, or the project has utilized the least money and produced most advantages. It should also be about timely provision of much needed public infrastructure, services and goods that are to be given to the people. In fact, some people have referred to it as a performance-based contract between the various partners to ensure that an unlocking of resources is made, and this should be successful. It is a streamlined, very targeted process to ensure that the goals are actually attained. And I think this amendment bill, to a large extent, goes on to ensure and try to provide provisions to make this process feasible, so that as county governments get engaged with PPPs, they can engage within a framework that leads to the success of those PPP agreements. I support, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable senators. There being no other person requesting for the floor, I would now like to call upon the mover to reply.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker. Number one is to say thank you to all senators who have made their tremendous contributions to this bill. And it's important, as has been recognized by many of them, that without it, our counties will remain poorer because they have no opportunity to utilize the existing methods of mobilizing resources and facilitating development in our counties. I believe that PPP will be useful in all sectors, that gone are the days that we look at government services as only being achievable if it's going to be done by government alone. It's possible that citizens, because PPP is open doors for citizens of the world, of the country and of the world, to make their contributions through the private sector, employ more people, and bring private sector ethics and work ethics to public service by charging a reasonable fee, at the same time being able to deliver credible services. And I think this is something that can be done, and that's why supervision is important. That's why the role of the county or national government entity or the national government itself to supervise that processes are very important. So, Madam Speaker, I don't want to say much. I know Senator Dulo has another bill to move, but I just want to say here now that I appreciate all senators for the good work they've done. I beg to reply and to request you to, understanding Order 61.3, to put the question to the next time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. For the convenience of the House, therefore, I order that the division will be done next time. Next order.
Order number 13, the Treaty Making and Ratification Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 23 of 2018, second reading.
Senator Fatuma Dulo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to take this opportunity to move this bill that reads the Treaty Making and Ratification Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 23 of 2018. Madam Speaker, if I may give a bit of background to this particular bill, the reason why I wanted to bring this amendment is because I remember last Senate, the National Assembly moved an amendment to remove the Senate from ratification of the treaties and obligations. That was the Treaty Making and Ratification Act number 45 of 2012. And I think we really struggled as a National Security and Foreign Relations Committee to try and summon the CS Foreign Affairs then, just simply to understand how the ratification and also what kind of responsibilities the counties are engaged with in terms of obligations and treaty making. But unfortunately, it was unfruitful. and we tried to see how we can salvage that, but that never happened. Madam Speaker, this is fairly a very straightforward amendment. I'm not going to take a long process, or maybe a long time to try and really explain. The reason why I am moving this amendment is because, for me, I really feel the treaties are really very important to the county government. And in as far as the responsibility of the Senate is concerned, the Senate is mandated by law to protect the interests of the counties. And I think if they are involved in the treaty ratification process, then the obligation by the county, by the country, will be attained. And I think with that, it's really important whenever treaties are submitted to the parliament, then we can be able to involve the Senate so that the Senate can be able to bring whatever amendment, or maybe to ensure that it is in compliance with the provision of Constitution and other various legislation, and protect the interest of the Senate. Madam Speaker, you may look at the, for example, treaties that affect maybe the boundaries, environment, and many other aspects. You will see that the county assemblies, the Senate that is mandated with the protection of the interest of the county government are really key in this. And I think it's not really right for the National Assembly to have left out the Senate in this ratification of the treaties. And I think it is important that we bring back this amendment so that the Senate will be able to deliberate in the issues of treaty making and ratification in this country. Madam Speaker, there are about 3-4 clauses, and basically most of them are fairly straightforward. Clause Section 2, Madam Speaker, it's fairly about bringing back the responsibility of the Senate. Then you can see Section 3 looks at the process where once the National Assembly are done with the treaties, then they should be able to pass it on to the Senate. And that follows the normal procedure where the normal bills are normally referred to the Senate. And I think, Madam Speaker, I really believe that this procedure must be followed so that the Senate should be able to deal with the issues of treaty ratification in our country. Madam Speaker, there is also a provision within the bill where you will see that the CS is mandated to table a report within a financial year, just to really state what is the status of ratification of treaties in this country are. And I think this is really very important because we'll be able to understand what the countries are doing, or what is the status of ratification in terms of various agreements and obligations the countries have entered into. And again, Madam Speaker, I believe if this takes place, then the counties will be able to participate in the treaty-making process. One time, we had a meeting with Yala members of parliament, and they really felt that we should be able to be involved as a Senate, because what Yala members are doing in their sittings, maybe in those assemblies of theirs, Madam Speaker, affects the county government. And naturally, if you see deliberations they are doing, it's matters that affect the county government, and yet they are not actually, their reports don't reach county government. And I think this is also very important. We need to consider all this. I don't think I'm going to take a lot of time to explain the process because it's fairly straightforward. And I think I'll stop at that, Madam Speaker, and I'll give an opportunity to Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. to second this bill. I thank you.
Senator Mutula.
Thank you, Speaker. Madam Speaker, this bill is fairly straightforward. as Senator Dulo, the mover, says. I just want to bring, and for the record, the attention of the Senate to Article 2.6. Any treaty or convention ratified by Kenya shall form part of the law of Kenya. Madam Speaker, Article 94, legislative authority of the Republic is derived from the people and at national level is vested in and exercised by Parliament, which includes the Senate. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, the amendment to remove the word Parliament and include the National Assembly is at best mischievous, at worst unconstitutional, of people who, just like I've mentioned, think the county executive is, the county government is the county executive. There are people who think Parliament is the National Assembly. Parliament is Senate and National Assembly. Madam Speaker, Senator Dulo has pointed out to very interesting issues. But we have now come to know that there is now a register of treaties which must be ideally be brought to the Senate so that we know what laws of Kenya, what commitments have Kenya made out there in the world. Those people who think, Madam Speaker, Senate does not form part of Parliament or counties don't form part of Kenya are people who have not read this constitution well. So, Madam Speaker, as I support this, I just want to say that this is a matter that should not, in fact, bring rancor. And I hope the bill that Senator Sakaja and I have proposed on determination of bills will resolve these disputes where the National Assembly excludes, where necessary, the Senate, and they have done it in so many other platforms and other laws, so that we can come to an understanding. This country and the legislative authority at national level is shared between the Senate and National Assembly. This country has entered, will enter, and will continue entering beyond Jubilee, beyond NASA, beyond all of us, beyond Raila, beyond Uhuru. We will enter into treaties, and we must leave a legacy. That legacy means that the structure of Parliament and making law, which forms part of the laws of Kenya, must be respected. When the President signs an act of Parliament, and that act of Parliament does not come to the Senate, is not an act of Parliament, is an act of the National Assembly. We must say so, because history will judge us harshly for these things. I know that we have several treaties that we have entered into. Some we haven't, some we have ratified, Arms Trade Treaty, others concerning counties, others concerning boundaries. I don't see the reason why the Senate can be excluded. This was mischief, and I don't know why it was done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to second. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, it is now 6:30 p.m. Time to interrupt the business of the House. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, 21st November 2018. At 2:30 p.m.